Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was guided by Konoha's strongest women, with Femme Kakashi, Tsunade, Anko, Kurenai and Shizune, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto stepped out of the Hokage's office and decided to try the Junin lounge first. He had heard from Asuma that Kakashi had been spending a lot of time there, recuperating. The wounds she sustained prevented her from doing any heavy workload for the village until they fully healed, which had relegated her to mainly looking over paperwork. Even if the medical ninja looked over her thoroughly, Naruto was still concerned there were lasting effects. That was why he was glad the Hokage had assigned him to Team 7 and Kakashi. It would put him in a better position to keep an eye on her. If there was something he could do to help, he would do it. As he walked the halls of the Hokage's complex, Naruto watched many ninja bustle between destinations with stacks of paperwork. The few who could see him past what they were carrying nodded in greeting or smiled. A few Genin Academy students even bowed in respect. No one had ever treated Naruto badly, as few knew about his status as the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, but those reactions were not what he was used to. I guess wearing a flak vest is more than just a choice in clothing, it puts you at a different level. He continued to be acknowledged until he arrived at the lounge. Although the name stated it was for high-level shinobi only, the Junin lounge was open to Chunins as well. That was why Naruto only hesitated a moment before entering. The room itself was not spectacular by any means. Inside were couches and booths of chairs built into small depressions in the floor. Windows took up most of the opposite wall to give everyone something to look at, although Naruto wondered if it had tactical value as well. A few cabinets were available to store food or utensils, but they did not see much use. Its main purpose was to function as a gathering point for Junin whenever the Hokage called a meeting. Very few were inside now considering the busy jobs the Hokage already had handed out. The Junin Naruto was looking for was not there unfortunately, but someone else he knew was. Naruto recognized Kurenai sitting in one of the booths, so he went over to her. Hopefully she had seen Kakashi. She smiled as he approached, glad to see a familiar face and in such a nice uniform. Naruto, it's good to see you. That vest looks like it was made for you to wear. He grinned. Kurenai was always so nice to him. If it wasn't for her support, he wasn't sure he could be the person he was today. That was why he made it a point to be just as nice to her and help her whenever she needed it. Thanks, Kurenai. Do you mind if I just call you that? Sensei just seems so impersonal. Even before his promotion, Naruto had difficulty trying to pick the proper title to give to Asuma and Kurenai. Though they both had taught him techniques as well as served as a teacher figure, that relationship was superseded by them being his older siblings. Kurenai, not one to make a big fuss over such things, waved him off with a small laugh. That he was even concerned about giving her an honorific tickled her. Don't worry, Naruto, you can call me whatever you like. Just remember to act properly when you're around superiors. Even though she didn't mind, other Junin or the Hokage might depending on the situation. With that out of the way, Naruto broached his main question. Have you seen Kakashi anywhere, Kurenai? I thought she might be here, but I guess I was wrong. An interested look appeared on Kurenai's visage as he asked the question. Naruto has been quite attached to Kakashi since that mission. I wonder what happened between those two. Rumors traveled fast about what happened during the mission, mostly from certain Team 7 genin bragging about it. Most considered them false until proven by Kakashi, but she had been unsurprisingly tight-lipped about the matter. Kurenai had not wanted to interfere with neither hers or Naruto's personal life, so she didn't bother to ask, but it was still interesting. Perhaps Asuma wasn't as far off in his teasing as she thought. Fortunately, she had information the blonde wanted to hear. Why, yes, I have. Guy was just in and forced her away to train with him. Apparently he challenged her to something again. Naruto was understandably confused. Kurenai struggled to find a proper term to describe Guy, in a way to sum everything up. In the end she had to settle with just describing his personality, as she refused to use the term youthful, as he most assuredly would have preferred. Guy is a fellow Junin and childhood friend of Kakashi's, as well as her self-proclaimed rival. Whenever he gets the chance he always challenges her to something outrageous to see which one of them is better at it. He is a bit too eccentric for his own good, and with Kakashi still healing, I hope he doesn't make her overdo it. That was enough for Naruto to know. There was no way he was going to let this guy force Kakashi into doing something she probably didn't even want to do. Thanks Kurenai, I'll go check the training grounds. Hopefully I can save her before something terrible happens. The young woman watched Naruto leave, amused by the pressure he put on himself to rescue Kakashi. Maybe it really was just her imagination, but things were getting interesting between those two. Naruto wasn't able to get far before he ran into his first obstacle. There were definite positives to having the Hokage's office and the Junin lounge all in the same place, but the academy was a different story. If he didn't want to deal with another assassination attempt from Konohamaru, he had to avoid the area entirely. Unfortunately, the thought of Kakashi hurting herself training was enough to make Naruto forget which part of the building he was running through. Soon enough Konohamaru and his friends came into view before they were quickly pushed out of the way by the much larger Chunin. Even as an academy student, the Hokage's grandson had a great ego and was not about to take getting pushed down from anyone, not even his uncle. When he saw it was Naruto, it only seemed to make him angrier. Watch where you're going, will ya? Wait, Uncle Naruto. Naruto turned around to see who he had pushed past and turned a bit white when he realized who it was. Things were about to get ugly. Konohama, I've got you now. Get him Moegi, Udon. His two friends in the academy were hesitant to follow orders, but were quickly reminded who Konohamaru's grandfather was. That got them to run after Naruto with Konohamaru leading the pack, intent on taking Naruto down and claiming the title of Chunin for their own. They tackled the Chunin all at once in an attempt to bring him to the ground. When they all comically fell through the blonde's chest, they looked to see the simple clone disappear. As Konohamaru cursed Naruto and his ability in E-rank ninjutsu, the real one was already halfway to the training grounds. Real or fake attempts on his life, Naruto didn't even flinch. Konohagakure. Training grounds. Come on Kakashi, this is the ultimate test of faith between you and your youthful students. At least try to play along. There will be no competition. You are just making a fool of yourself, guy. Oh no you don't Kakashi. Last time you tried to warn me about making a fool of myself, I almost lost the competition. Not this time. Naruto came across an interesting sight when he arrived at the training ground. In front of him there were two of Kakashi, identical in almost every way. One of them seemed to be shouting something about burning youth while the other stood there with hands in pocket, completely calm. When they realized he was standing there, they immediately stopped bickering. The one which had been so passionate a moment before did their best to mimic Kakashi's laid-back pose. Though they were able to keep their hands in the pant pockets, that Kakashi was unable to pull off the uninterested look Naruto had gotten so used to seeing. Hello Naruto-kun, I hope you are ready for some grade A training today. It will be most most hip. The clear imposter said with a thumbs up and barely hidden smile. Naruto looked at her for a moment, turned, and then addressed the normal Kakashi as he would usually. Kakashi-sensei, are you sure you are alright with training so soon after our mission? She gave him an iconic eye smile and nodded, completely ignoring the devastated guy to her right. I feel better now Naruto, thanks for the concern. I'm glad to hear that, it means we can start training together sooner. Oh, quite eager aren't you? Their conversation was cut off by an irate guy who had since transformed back and had been trying to get their attention by flailing his arms madly. Unfortunately, Kakashi's previously mentioned coolness prevented her from hearing him, and it seemed her student shared the sentiment. Hey, Kakashi, what the heck was that performance? Kakashi turned to her overzealous friend with a bored expression and, in the most matter-of-fact tone, spoke. Oh right, the competition. Guess you lost. Guy was unable to form words in response, preferring instead to quietly dismiss himself. It seemed Kakashi racked up another victory, he would have to try even harder the next time. He would learn the ways of Kakashi's cool and then she would have no choice but to accept Guy's feelings. Poor Guy, she just was not interested. With her full attention back to Naruto, Kakashi could finally update him on what the Hokage had no doubt told him by now. Out of respect for the Hokage as well as her sensei, she felt obligated to look out for Naruto's well-being and teach him whatever she could. That meant that he would need to have an excuse to be with her, for her to lead by example. With the Hokage's help, she was able to arrange that. Hopefully Naruto didn't mind much. The Hokage has no doubt told you that you are now partnered with Team 7 and I. Don't think of it as much of a punishment but learning experience. Naruto could barely hold back his excitement. There was no way he could see that as punishment. I see a lot of my younger self in you, Naruto, so I'd like to help you if I can. What all this means is that we will be spending more time together. You don't mind, right? I don't mind at all, Kakashi-sensei. They shared a smile before Kakashi led him into the open training ground. It was a beautiful day that would be a shame to waste. That meant the two would start early by training today, without the rest of the team. Alright Naruto, I've already gone over your profile the Hokage gave me. From what I can tell, your experiences with Asuma and Kurenai gave you a well-rounded balance in your taijutsu, ninjutsu, and genjutsu. Does that sound about right? Naruto was doing a few light stretches to get ready for whatever Kakashi was going to throw at him. He nodded in agreement. The training those two had given him really did help. My job isn't to build on what you have already learned from Asuma-san and Kurenai-san, it would only hinder your growth. I'm going to be teaching you new techniques that can be used in conjunction with what you already know. That made enough sense to Naruto and it also sounded a lot more interesting. So, what's first? First, we elaborate on your wind affinity. Do you know anything about it, Naruto? Other than, of course, you can create wind chakra. Naruto only knew what he remembered from Academy and from what Asuma told him when they first discovered the affinity. Well, I know that it is strong against Raiden techniques, like yours. It is also weak against Kaden techniques, but can be used to enhance them if the user knows both. Kakashi smiled. He had the simple definition figured out. That is correct. Futon techniques are also well known for enhancing a weapon's length and power. But the technique I am going to teach you goes along with what you already know, enhancing Kaden with Futon chakra. Naruto was intrigued, but he didn't know how to mold Kaden chakra. Perhaps that was what Kakashi would teach him. Kakashi started teaching him the basic hand signs of the technique as she continued to speak. Remember Naruto, with enough practice you can master any element. Something like that can take years though, so it is better to focus on something complementary to what you already know. That is why Asuma-san knows both Kaden and Futon techniques, because they work so well together. The hand signs weren't difficult to learn as Naruto had seen them done before. Kakashi was teaching him a common fireball technique that many of the village's shinobi already employed. It was something even Naruto had yet to learn though, so he paid close attention as she described the proper way to handle fire chakra in the body. You will feel the heat build in your stomach and come up your esophagus, release it with a gust of air from your lungs. That is how many fire techniques, basic or complex, are formed. That was when Kakashi left the rest in Naruto's hands, as she knew the best way to learn was from personal experience. It took him most of the rest of their time together, but Naruto's fireball technique was growing larger each time he committed to it. She was amazed by the amount of chakra he had to continue training for hours, but considering the fox, it wasn't so unbelievable. Well done, Naruto-kun. Next time we will see what effects it has with a futon technique. Remember, we have a practice with the rest of the team tomorrow at noon. Kakashi dismissed him and went her own way back home, as the sun was setting. Naruto just watched her leave before turning for home himself. He immediately ran into Asuma, whom had caught onto their training session and had been watching from the sidelines. They seemed to work together well, as if it was natural. Naruto hung off her every word and Kakashi knew how to manipulate that positively. Well, good to see you finally making some progress. I thought you two would never part. His teasing didn't affect Naruto as much this time, as their reason of being together was because of the Hokage himself. What are you doing here, Asuma? Naruto asked. Neutral. Asuma smiled. Him putting up that tough act only made it more fun. For now though he would put away the jokes, there was serious business afoot after all. I caught Kurenai in the lounge and found out you were looking for Kakashi. Since I wanted to get some work done with your taijutsu training, I thought I'd try and find you. Of course, you two would stay inseparable until the end of the day. He said in a mock-accusing tone, as if it was Naruto's fault. With the next joke, Naruto deadpanned. Does Kakashi know about this running gag? Of course she does. Her hearing is better than you think. That wasn't a satisfactory answer, but Naruto knew there was no getting through to him. Alright, then if you really do want to train me now, let's figure out a time to meet tomorrow. Naruto suggested, still skeptical. Asuma had any time to spare from his team. I was just thinking about that. How about we knock two birds with one stone? We train the hour before you are supposed to meet up with Kakashi and you can impress her by showing off your skills. As long as you can learn fast enough, that is. Sensing a challenge, Naruto was up for it. If you can get up that early, then so can I. Let's do this. The two brothers set out for home, both very sure the other would be experiencing a taste of humiliation the next time they fought. Training grounds. Naruto and Asuma were both up before their allotted training hour, preparing themselves. Asuma had the obvious advantage. Naruto may have watched him use the blades, but the forms and stance eluded him. It would be fair, however, because Asuma would give his younger brother a crash course before smoking him into dust. They left together, without a word. Both wore confident grins that they would be victorious. Neither of them really remembered what started the competition, only knowing that they would not concede. Asuma and Naruto arrived at the training grounds a little late, but made up for it with determination. They both took out their chakra blades and, with Asuma leading, went through the stance as well as the common forms of Hine. These would be what Naruto would use the most often in combat. Remember to go with the wind, not against it. Your movements should be powerful but graceful, quick to react. Against anything larger than a kunai, use both blades to block unless you want a chunk taken out of you. They are durable, but they don't have that good of defense. You can slice your opponent along the entire length of the blade, but remember you will have the most power behind the thinner part. That is also where you will want to extend your wind chakra. Naruto went through the paces of each form a few times. At times he felt like some sort of taijutsu boxer, others he felt like a legitimate swordsman. Up until that point he had been holding back using his chakra to extend the blade, to save energy, but now was Naruto's turn to try. Okay Asuma, I think I have the basic forms down. Now tell me how to shape my chakra around it. Asuma had been watching Naruto and felt like he was ready to step it up to the next level. After all, if he didn't learn how to use a chakra blade effectively, he wouldn't stand a chance in one-on-one. Take a careful look at your blade and memorize the shape of it. The hardest part of shape manipulation is getting your chakra to properly take on the shape you want. To start with, focus your chakra around the lower tip of the blade, wrapping it around to form a point that extends from the physical edge. Naruto held up his left arm so that the blade was level. He began to feed chakra into the blade, a bit too much at first. Blue energy enveloped the blade for a moment, but Naruto got it under control. As he focused the chakra around the lower edge, it began to turn blue-white as the chakra became wind itself. A low whipping sound could be heard, as if a storm was brewing. It was shaky, but Naruto was holding the chakra's shape around his blade. To experiment the durability he swung it around a few times, the pressure to hold it in place wasn't as bad. As he began to envelope the rest of the weapon in chakra, Asuma watched on. Naruto was constantly putting too much or too little chakra into the blade or lost his concentration, but he kept at it. With that kind of rate, he might have had a higher endurance than even Asuma. Alright Naruto, enough messing around. I've shown you the basics, but for the advanced stuff you are going to have to fight me. Naruto looked at his hands, flexing the muscles that the blades used. Yes, it was tricky but he could do it. Asuma would have the advantage but not for long. Are you sure you can handle this? Asuma smirked, willing to take that challenge. He brought up his own trench knives and got into the standard form, arms up and legs ready to pounce. Naruto mimicked his brother, already funneling wind chakra to his blades. It wasn't enough to be seen, but it was enough to make an impact. So that is his plan. Asuma had gotten used to hearing wind chakra with his own extensive use of it, and he knew the trick Naruto was trying for. For now, he decided to play along. Being the younger and more aggressive, Naruto launched forward to start the battle. Their blades clashed and sparks flew as Naruto's chakra around his blades intensified. That forced Asuma back, unable to resist the ferocity of the attack. Naruto's blade turned from dagger to something akin to a buzzsaw. The wind tore at the bit to grab a hold of the Junin. Damn, Naruto isn't backing down from this one. Asuma funneled his own chakra, elongating his weapon blades with wind. They clashed again, evenly matched for the first few moments. As Naruto was pushed back by Asuma's raw strength, they fell into the taijutsu side of Hine. Fists flung and blades clashed as they weaved in and out of attacks before trying to weave a horizontal or vertical slice. Neither could get through, but the wind chakra was getting its tribute. The whipping wind started scratch and scrape their arms and hands that were soon covered in blood. You can't win like this, Naruto. You are too obvious. Asuma blocked another strike and, with a previously measured calculation, swung his chakra out for a strike at Naruto's abdomen. And you are too careful, you won't get through with that speed. Naruto's body betrayed his fervor as it shook, blocking the attack. Their duel only got louder and louder until it started to attract visitors. Neither of them noticed as four familiar faces emerged from an adjacent training ground. As it turned out, Kakashi had gathered her squad earlier than she told Naruto. She wanted to talk with them and get some individual training done before Naruto took over her priorities. That said, she was surprised to see the blonde not only up early and training but fiercely fighting against Asuma with wind chakra. Holy! Before Arata loudly announced their presence, Sakura placed a hand over his mouth and punched him in the head. None would admit it, but they were entranced by the sights and sounds of pure chakra slamming into itself. Naruto and Asuma retreated from one another, gaining distance. With one last effort, they both leapt forward with their weapons ready. They slammed into each other with enough force to crack the earth beneath their feet. It's over. Naruto. Give up already. Asuma again pushed Naruto to the limit, forcing him back. Guess I will have to try something crazy. Naruto thought regretfully as he would have liked to win with raw strength. This is something I learned from Kakashi-sensei. Without going through hand signs, Naruto created a small stream of flame from his mouth and ignited the wind chakra. It launched forward and enveloped Asuma in a raging fireball. That gave Naruto the chance he needed to retreat when he realized Asuma replaced himself with a log. Kakashi was amazed Naruto was even able to wield those blades, let alone use Kaden in such a situation. Just one training session from her and the blonde had already figured out how to apply it to another technique he just recently learned. Well done, Naruto. Asuma sat in a tree branch just above Kakashi's squad, his grin filled with pride. That was when Naruto finally realized he had an audience and was unsure of what to do or say. He looked like a wild man, his breath hoarse and his arms torn up. When the genin applauded and Kakashi just smiled a knowing smile, he knew he had won. The rest of the training with Team 7 went well, but it was nowhere near eventful as the Hine fight. Not even Arata and his ego could find a way to find fault in Naruto's performance, not when Kakashi couldn't. For now, he had that victory. A week later, Konoha Ninja Academy. It was finally time for the much-anticipated Chunin exams. Though the genin were surely fretting it, Naruto had no such problems. He was on his way to the Ninja Academy now to meet up with the Junin. For now his orders were to attend each event with the squad leaders, basically to remain on standby. Fine by me, I guess. Naruto landed into the courtyard of the academy. He noticed quickly that most of the genin had already gone inside to take the test. From what he heard, it was some sort of written exam, but if he could find Kakashi or Kurenai, they might be able to tell him more. Before he could even walk in the door, he was collected by Kurenai. She had already been inside to see Team 8 off and so was headed back to the lounge. The other Junin had been aware of Naruto's orders and so were on the lookout to bring him along should they find him. Kurenai was glad to find him first. Hello Naruto-kun, ready for the Chunin exams. Naruto wasn't noticing anything significant yet, so he shrugged. Can't say I am Kurenai-chan. Nothing seems different, I guess. Kurenai smiled. It seemed Naruto had missed the large procession of genin. If he had seen them, surely that would be enough to spark his interests. She couldn't blame him for feeling bored though. The entire event was mostly hands-off by the village except for the exam proctors. The rest of the Junin and Chunin would not be doing much of anything related. Come on. Kakashi was just finishing up with Team 7. We can walk to the lounge together. The thought of seeing his new teacher again seemed to reinvigorate him. Naruto and Kakashi got along well together for some reason, even if they acted differently. Naruto was reserved but cheerful. Kakashi was almost isolated in comparison. She kept her distance from everyone. The blonde was the first one she had shown any interest in. A few stragglers aside, the halls were empty. It was kind of odd seeing the academy, usually so full of life, now almost like a tomb. Naruto tried to play it off as just anxiety, but it bothered him. Kurenai seemed to not notice as they deftly navigated the halls. That was something many of the genin seemed to have trouble doing even if they had been through these halls countless times before. Maybe that was another test the Chunin exam offered, an unwritten one, to test the nerves. As they went up the last flight of stairs, Kakashi came into view. She was already making progress down the hall toward the lounge, hands in pocket. Nothing seemed to faze her about leaving her charges to the wolves. Perhaps Kakashi was just quicker to accept that it was for the best. Kakashi. Hearing Kurenai, the silver-haired Junin turned around. When she saw her fellow kunoichi's charge, she realized what was going on. She was beginning to wonder if Naruto was going to show up for his mission. Now that he was there and had already missed Team 7's goodbyes, there was little left to see. Kurenai-san. Naruto. Good to see you made it, though there isn't anything left to do but wait. They joined her by the entrance, taking a moment before entering. Asuma and Guy were most likely inside already. So Kakashi-sensei, what exactly am I supposed to be doing? The Hokage just said report to you. Naruto made his assumptions, but really he had no idea. You won't be seeing much for the first exam, unfortunately. It is a written test. We aren't allowed inside for obvious reasons, so for now we wait. Once the first exam is finished, the Junin will make their way to the second exam's location. Naruto. I think you'll like that one. Kurenai shared a glance with Kakashi, clearly knowing what she was talking about. Naruto had only the faintest idea, so he didn't appreciate their conspiratorial looks. Come on. Everyone else is already comfortable. They went inside with the Genjutsu mistresses urging. Guy and Asuma were already here, along with a few other Junin from squads Naruto didn't recognize. Most were sitting in the booths while a few chose to stand and talk near a drink dispenser. Most everyone paid attention as they came in, eyes locked on the blonde. What's a Chunin doing here? One of the Junin asked, confused. Yeah, don't you have something better to do? Another said with a haughty tone, taking a swig of his drink. Naruto didn't like their attitudes but said nothing. He didn't have to. Kurenai and Kakashi made it clear he was with them. Even Guy glared at the offending Junin. Hokage's orders, mind your business. Kakashi ended that conversation with her flat, no argument tone. Kurenai looked no less serious, arms crossed. The first one, whom had been genuinely confused, put his hands up in surrender. Last thing he wanted to do was bother the two ice queens of the village. His rude counterpart, however, clearly had some backbone and was not about to back down. Nico had followed the village's orders since he was as young as some of the academy students. He earned his rank with blood and sweat, and watched even more of his friends and comrades lose their lives. That was why it annoyed him that this kid with the whisker face got to go on some mission and suddenly thought of himself as all that. The only reason he got a promotion was the Hokage's special treatment, nothing more. I'm just saying that someone like him disrespects the rest of us by being here. What has he done to stand in these halls and call himself a Chunin? When Kakashi realized the idiot was being serious, she got serious too. To make her point, she approached Nico to speak face to face. Hands on her hips, her voice remained neutral if not a bit annoyed. Naruto had been waiting for a chance to become Chunin for longer than he should have. Not just that, if it wasn't for him the mission would have failed. He demonstrated ability that surpassed what anyone expected. It was ludicrous she had to explain this again, but for some reason Nico didn't hear anything meaningful. All I see is a weak kunoichi that needed saving by the Hokage's pet. To hammer his point home, he jabbed a finger at Kakashi's chest, but was stopped mid-step, even before Asuma or Guy could get up. Naruto stood next to Kakashi, crossing the distance with little more than a flicker. His gloved hand held the protruding finger tightly, not enough to break but enough to hurt. No one would disrespect Kakashi after Naruto had seen what she had to go through for the sake of that mission, not even the Hokage could have. That was why Naruto was seriously thinking about breaking his finger to teach Nico a lesson. Nico was trying to ease his finger out of Naruto's grip but yelped when he only tightened his hold. She doesn't have to take that from anyone, especially not you. A soft voice calmed his heaving chest. Her hand rested on his shoulder, the thumb just barely touching the nape of his neck. Even if he had gone too far, even if he would get punished for it, Naruto wouldn't back down until someone he trusted told him to. Naruto, it's fine. Just relax. Kakashi knew she had to keep him calm if she wanted the situation to not escalate further. The last thing they needed was the fox making a reappearance. She was flattered if not a bit confused at why Naruto reacted the way he did, but petty squabbles weren't important. There were bigger things they had to be concerned for during such an important event like the exams. With much reluctance Naruto let him go, but remained close to Kakashi. Nico was visually infuriated to be humbled by Naruto, but many others were intimidated. Naruto may have just been a chunin, but his eyes promised murder if anyone tried to hurt someone close to him. This ain't over, kid. Not by a long shot. The offender waved his hand through dirty pink hair, visibly frustrated he couldn't take out his anger. There was a time and place for that, and he would make sure to show Naruto what it meant to be a Konoha ninja. That was something there was no way he could learn, one tough mission or not. Kakashi led Naruto over to where Asuma and Guy were getting settled in again. She needed to remember to keep those two away from each other to avoid further conflict. Nico didn't know the kind of hornet's nest he was poking, and it could have disastrous results for the both of them. If Kakashi could do anything, she wanted to keep Naruto's hands clean of the blood of a fellow Konoha shinobi. To have to go through that experience was not something she would wish on anyone. Well, Naruto, you sure know how to start a party. Things were quiet till you got here, Asuma said, trying to lighten things up. A glare from Kurenai cut him short, and he realized that the comment was made in bad taste. The quicker the confrontation was out of mind, the better. Naruto-kun, your youth was on great display just then. I haven't seen a man come to a woman's aid with that speed since, well, since myself. Guy gave him a thumbs up and bright smile, making Naruto grin. Thanks, I think. Kurenai and Kakashi sat on Naruto's sides while Asuma and Guy sat across. There was an odd tinge of jealousy both men experienced as they watched the women cling abnormally close to the blonde. He was clearly oblivious about the attention, or didn't consider it outside of the norm. Neither of the girls might have realized what they were doing either, but clearly they were concerned about his well-being after the fight. Nico and the rest of them were pushed from mind as they just started to talk about the day. What each of them did and how their genin were before the test started. It was nothing special, but Naruto felt right at home. That was something Nico couldn't take away from him, the moments he shared with his precious people. Forest of Death. Tower. Naruto and the rest of the Junin made their way through the second exam's training ground with little effort. They dodged and evaded all matter of creatures and plants, even a few leftover traps from the genin teams whom had gone farther in. Kakashi stayed close to him, ensuring Naruto's safety. That was especially important to the Hokage as he put her mission orders in perspective. With so many foreign shinobi, they could not risk leaving Naruto alone for long. Not to mention that Nico had not stopped giving Naruto a glare since they left the lounge. She did not know if the unruly man would try something. Luckily they made it through with little trouble, and Nico was not permitted to go to the tower. His team had failed the written exam, fitting she felt. It displayed a failure in his teachings rather than the individual genin. He didn't raise them to the standards he supposedly set himself to, standards Naruto apparently did not meet. Fool, the only proper term to describe. Her thoughts were shared but not expressed by many of the others. The procession of ranked shinobi included Junin from foreign nations like Suna and Oto. Neither of them seemed all that polite or welcoming, so Konoha steered clear, preferring to stay with their own. Everyone was headed in the same direction though. They were to see the Hokage and wait for their teams to arrive. Hiruzen waited in one of the rooms higher up in the tower. It was littered with tubes and monitors that allowed the attending shinobi to keep an eye on the second exam takers as well as the environment itself. A few Anbu were present as well at the Hokage's bequest, arms folded at his flanks with bored faces hidden behind porcelain. Shortly before the Junin arrived, a proctor arrived to alert the Hokage. He turned and watched as the nicely sized group of older shinobi entered, all bowing in respect to the cage. Not even the foreign countries were immune from that. Then he saw Naruto closely attended to by Kakashi, and a smile graced his lips. It was good to see they had made it safely. Welcome, Junin, to where you will be spending quite some time for the next few days. Here in the tower you will wait for the victorious genin to arrive, in which we will progress to the next stage of the exams. Though the idea of staying in the tower was not all the appealing, the thought of their teams walking through the gates victorious was enough to sway most of those present. Naruto had to admit that, even if he only knew what little Kakashi and the others explained to him, the Chunin exams were intense. It didn't bother any confidence he already had in himself, but somewhere in the back of his mind he was glad he wasn't slogging through the forest with the rest of them. His thoughts drifted to Team 7 and there was some concern. Was Sakura doing alright? Would Arata listen to the others, or was Sasuke even properly leading them? He guessed he would find out soon enough. A hand on his shoulder made him turn and see Kakashi indicate he follow her out. Come on. No point in staying here with the rest. Where are we going? A mischievous glint came to her revealed eye, surprising Naruto. He was not sure he had seen that side of Kakashi before, he had no idea she knew how to have fun. The thought sounded bad after he said it, but it still rang true with the rumors of her status as Ice Queen. Somewhere with a great view. Kakashi led him upstairs past where most of the rest of the staff bothered to work. There they went through a set of doors that led them to the very tip of the tower. It commanded a respectable view of the entire forest and even out farther, the trees were barely stalks of grass in comparison. Holy! Naruto walked over to the edge. They were up so high that no safety railing existed. All the real viewing areas were farther below. Kakashi joined him without as much reaction, she had been here a few times before. Once during the Chunin exams she herself took as a child as well as during her time in the ANBU. When she was first showed this spot by her sensei, she couldn't much believe it herself. 000. Here Kakashi, I have something to show you. Consider it a reward for your performance. What do you mean sensei? Wah. Before the poor girl could argue, Minato flashed through space and time. They appeared on the roof, Kakashi flopping to the ground. She was still not used to that experience and doubted she ever would be. When she realized where they were she gasped in amazement. Sensei. Is this the very top? Yes. The view was so great I had to mark it. I return here every so often to think. Kakashi could see why, it was so serene up there. Without the wind there was barely a sound. She would have promised to remember the spot, if it was something forgettable. Luckily, that was unnecessary. Kakashi, promise me something. The young girl looked back at her sensei, hair blowing in the wind. Be sure to bring someone close to you to this spot. Don't let it be forgotten. The thought of Obito joining her there gave Kakashi a light feeling in her stomach, it sort of made her uncomfortable. No, the idiot wouldn't appreciate it anyway. She would have to wait. 000. Sure, sensei. Kakashi whispered her response out of Naruto's earshot. It had taken a while but she found someone to bring along. Maybe it was only fitting it be Minato's son, but for some reason she didn't think that was the reason she chose Naruto. The smile on his face was enough to tell her alone it was the right decision. He almost reminded her of Minato as he stood there in a similar pose, arms crossed and face calm as he took in the view. Something like this can't go to waste, Kakashi-sensei. Someday we should come back here, maybe bring someone else along. Kakashi smiled, he was right. A moment like that couldn't go to waste. Sure. Naruto-kun. Let me know when you find someone. Sometime later. You who are gathered today have successfully completed the second exam, displaying your abilities to survive as a shinobi. Hiruzen welcomed the remaining genin teams, all lined up to be presented. There were more than Anko had first expected, so they would have need of the preliminary match format, but first an introduction and congratulation was in order. Their bodies were caked in dirt and light wounds, they deserved that much. Naruto stood behind the Hokage as he gave his speech, along with the rest of the remaining Junin. Kakashi stood at his side, looking no more attentive than usual. The others held themselves to a bit higher regard, hands clasped at their backs or arms at their sides, eyes straight. Naruto was like them, he was unable to act in such a laid-back manner in such an important event, especially with the Hokage right there. They were representing Konoha after all, right? Those who had their team fail were sent to collect them, or their remains. It was a grisly job but no Junin would refuse it. It was the worst wake-up call one could receive, but a necessary one. It was a warning, a grave one, for the next group that Junin may train, to make them work that much harder to see it not happen again. Naruto's interest peaked when they revealed that the latter part of the exam would consist of preliminary matches. Those would decide who could move on to the final part, some sort of battle royale a month from then. He followed Kakashi as she walked with Team 7 to the balconies that lined their concrete arena. "So Naruto, you been taking good care of Sensei while we were away?" Arata asked with a coy smile. Before Sakura could give him another good hit to the head, Naruto beamed. "Yep. No worries there." They were frozen mid-step, even Kakashi's eye widened. "Seems like you guys handled yourselves well so far. Don't fail now." Sasuke was the first to recover, a smart grin on his face. "Naturally. None of these guys are strong enough to challenge us after all." He crossed his arms in confidence, but Naruto felt something off about him. It was like his body was barely holding it together. Kakashi must have picked up on it too, her eye focusing on the Uchiha. Arata grinned, nodding in agreement. Sakura, her hair now cut short from some battle in the forest, couldn't enjoy the praise. She was too worried about Sasuke after what Orochimaru did to him. Naruto led the two genin over to a free spot in the stands while Kakashi whispered something in Sasuke's ear. His eyes widened for a moment, surprised by what she said. He quickly recovered as Kakashi patted his shoulder, carefully, and returned to where Naruto was. They stood with the team as Hayate quickly got the show started. A monitor appeared and revealed who the first two fighters would be, Sasuke and Yoroi. Those two were promptly herded to the arena as the rest of them geared up to watch how the Uchiha would handle the fight. Upon Sasuke's victory, Kakashi quickly dismissed herself to attend to the genin. It seemed that whatever was wrong was more than the medical ninja could handle, as she waved them off. Naruto watched as Sasuke was led away by her, unsure of what to do. Kakashi gave an unspoken order that she had wanted Naruto to stay. It was clear in her body language she was not to be followed, but it didn't make him feel any better. Naruto looked at Arata and Sakura, both were clearly concerned for their teammate. Not even the rogue could hide his feelings, those small hands of his were balled into fists. Whoever did whatever to Sasuke that was making him like that had made some enemies in Team 7. Faking a smile, Naruto tousled Arata's brown hair and winked. "Don't worry, Kakashi will handle it." The tension left them as Arata pouted about being treated like a kid. The Chunin's mind was elsewhere, however, and he made a silent decision in his mind to check on something. Only a few of the ninja in the room, namely the more attentive Junin, noticed Naruto subtly leave a clone of himself behind as he flickered through the exit. The Hokage tipped his hat, concerned that something had happened. If Naruto was willing to make that kind of exit, it was clearly something was wrong. "I'll leave it to you, Naruto. Be careful." The matches continued, unaware that two Konoha shinobi were about to have a very real, very frightening run-in with an S-class criminal. "That should do it." Sasuke's grunts and groans of pain ceased as he fell to the floor, unconscious. Kakashi had just finished sealing the cursed mark, the seal in which Orochimaru placed on her student during the second exam. Sasuke was lucky to be alive by any count if what happened to Anko told them anything. Then again, perhaps it was more appropriate that he be considered cursed. "Congratulations, Kakashi. Good for you, sealing away that nasty mark." Her eyes widened when she realized just who was speaking. Kakashi turned on her heel to face Orochimaru, who emerged from the shadows. His wide smile coupled with the malice hidden behind it was enough to turn her entire body cold. She tensed in case he was going to try anything, she needed to be ready. "Orochimaru. Isn't this a bit bold of you?" The criminal said nothing for a bit, approaching her. When he did speak, it was very casual, as if she wasn't even a threat. "I am only here to retrieve my prize. You did not conceal the fact Sasuke survived the attack very well, you only can blame yourself." One more step toward her made Kakashi lower her right arm and begin to gather chakra. She used her left hand to hold her right wrist, helping her keep control of the technique. He wouldn't get Sasuke as long as she was breathing. "You will come no further. Reikiri." Orochimaru just laughed, a truly entertained laugh. She actually thought that would stop him. "Come on, Kakashi, that won't be enough to stop me. Just stand aside." Before he could go any farther, another sound rang out. Instead of the crackle of unkempt lightning, this was the whipping of a powerful windstorm. They turned to see Naruto appear from the darkness, from behind a pillar. He had been waiting for the right moment to interrupt, hoping that Orochimaru would run from Kakashi alone. There was no way he would let her fight this fight alone, even if he was outmatched. You'll have to go through me too. Orochimaru saw the Jinchuriki brat and scowled, his fun ruined. Kakashi wanted to reprimand Naruto for coming, but she was most likely still alive because he was there. HMPH. Konoha has become a lot more annoying since I left. Fighting the two of you might be a bit too much, so I suppose I can wait until Sasuke comes to me on his own. Orochimaru turned to Kakashi, who still stood ready to strike, even if a bit of fear gripped her heart. Now is your chance, Kakashi. Just try and kill me, see if you can save your precious student. He turned to leave, binding both her and Naruto in a very powerful aura of killing intent. It was enough to make them both flinch. Naruto even fell to one knee. So that was the power of an S-class shinobi, not something either one of them were willing to experience again. They just remained there for a while, collecting themselves. Then Kakashi collected Sasuke and told Naruto to return to the stands. They had to keep appearances normal. She would deposit the Uchiha at the hospital and return, so he had to keep Arata and Sakura calm. Although he was hesitant to leave Kakashi alone after that encounter, he knew that his element of surprise was useless. Not to mention there was little he could do against Orochimaru in his current state. Begrudgingly he returned to the stands to watch the finishing part of Arata's match against Tenten. There wasn't much left for him to watch though, because Tenten had just about run out of tricks. Arata had her on the run with his technique, manipulating her own barrage against her. She did her best to dodge or block, but any weapon she tried to use just added to the boy's arsenal. Obviously tired, Tenten gave up when she realized that she just was not able to fight in her current condition. Hayate made the ruling final and the weapons fell to the ground, motionless. The applause was sporadic, but again it came from the Konoha side. Naruto and a few others gave him the deserving applause, while Team Guy looked disappointed with the outcome. No one could blame Tenten though, she was outmatched from the start, her over-reliance on the weapons turned into her downfall. That said, no one could understand Arata's technique either, not even Arata himself. Although he was more willing to use it now with Naruto's training and Kakashi's advice, it was still a mostly unknown ability he had. Its power was obvious though, if that display was anything to go by. Only Baki seemed to realize the magnitude of what he was watching, with experience in seeing not one but two of the Cage display a similar skill. How Konoha got their hands on such a powerful technique, he did not know, but it only meant that their plans would effectively prevent Arata from going any further. Suna's honor would be restored. When Kakashi excused herself a second time, there was just a minor change from the last time. When she took Sasuke out of the room, she made no inclination for Naruto to follow. This time, it was as if she was baiting him to come with, lingering at the doorway. To Naruto, that meant she wanted his help. Leaving the genin of Team 7 under Guy's care, Naruto excused himself to catch up with Kakashi. Knowing her, she was going to check up on Sasuke. It seemed as if Orochimaru gave up too easily, as displayed in his power to subdue the both of them with ease. If he could do that, why not take Sasuke? No, he must have had another plan that wouldn't implicate him. It was no secret that Orochimaru had his own network of spies around the world, including inside of Konoha. He might have relegated the task of capturing Sasuke to one of them. There was no doubt Kakashi put Sasuke under guard considering Orochimaru's interest in him, but would they be enough? If Kakashi was worried enough to return to the room, it meant that whoever it was strong. Naruto ran as fast as he could and arrived at the hospital's top floor in no time. He had to guess they were keeping Sasuke in the suite to keep him out of the way, but the carnage in the hallway showed that it wasn't enough. Anbu bodies were scattered all around. It was almost as if they fell without putting up a fight. That was the first tip-off there was danger, but no sign that Kakashi was already inside. The door was left ajar, a body keeping it from closing. Naruto took out his chakra blades and quickly fitted them on, shuffling to the door's edge. He sensed someone running toward the door and leapt out in front, arms up and ready. Kabuto's Anbu double stopped in its tracks, its escape route cut off. Now it looked between Kakashi and Naruto, unsure of what to do. Kakashi knew Naruto would follow her. She was actually counting on it. With him surrounded now, Kakashi approached while Naruto entered with his guard up. They couldn't afford to let the spy get away. Another of the bodies stirred, forcing their attention from one Anbu to another. It threw shuriken at one of the windows and leapt through the weakened glass, leaving Kakashi and Naruto only a moment behind. Before Naruto could leap out in pursuit, Kakashi stopped him with an outstretched hand. They couldn't afford to run after him, it was too late anyway. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto whispered through bared teeth, realizing the same thing. She turned to her student, smiling. Even in that situation, she could smile. Perhaps more accurately, she could put on a mask. Nicely done, Naruto. Without you things might have gotten worse. But Kakashi. No point in arguing now. She said in a serious tone, cutting off his argument. Stay here with Sasuke while I get some help to clean up the mess. Disappointed, Naruto watched her disappear into the hallway. He looked at Sasuke and had to wonder just what cards fate had dealt the Uchiha to give him that much bad luck. Not only that, he wondered what it meant for Kakashi and the rest of Konoha should they lose him to the darkness. Some time later, Konohagakure Hospital lobby. Kakashi had gathered Team 7, minus Sakura, to explain what the training month would be like. The two kunoichi had met earlier and Sakura decided to pursue her own training regardless if she lost or not. Kakashi would take Sasuke while Arata would be taught by Ebisu. Naruto had joined them at Kakashi's request, although her news was anything but good. He knew she wanted to keep an eye on Sasuke considering Orochimaru's presence, but they wouldn't be able to train together with her focus on him, not to mention she was taking him to the outskirts of Konoha. As that satisfactory? Sasuke, Arata. The two looked between each other, their rivalry still growing. Fine by me. Let's get to it. With them taken care of, she dismissed them to prepare. She then turned to Naruto and gave the best look of apology she could. If things went her way during the exams, she would have trained Naruto side by side with the rest of Team 7. Unfortunately, Orochimaru ruined that. Sorry Naruto. You will have to go without me for a month. Naruto just shook his head, he understood. He didn't like it, but he understood. It's alright Kakashi-sensei, I know why. They watched Sasuke leave, concern creasing their expressions. This may not be any consolation, but I have a feeling someone else will be able to help you more than me. Keep in touch with Kurenai and Asuma, they should be able to at least get you started. Naruto may not have been participating in the final exams, but that didn't make his progress any less important. Whether they thought of it that way or not, having a strong Jinchuriki was good for the village as a whole. Understood. Be careful Kakashi-sensei. Don't worry too much Naruto-kun, I can handle myself. She set a hand on his shoulder when a look of regret crossed his eyes. Thank you though. Her smile made him feel a little better. They parted ways and Naruto decided that, since he didn't have any other obligations, he would go to the hot springs. He needed to relax after such a stressful past few days. Little did he know that trip to the hot springs would be a lot more eventful than he was expecting. Hot springs. Ah. Now this is nice. Naruto had shed his towel and started to relax in a private spring room. He had no idea the Sarutobi had permanent reservations, but he wasn't one to look a gift horse in the mouth. In the distance he could hear a bunch of women splashing around, gossiping, and giggling. Must have been a party on the other side of the bamboo, not that he would want to know anyway. He liked girls, sure, but being a pervert about it wasn't his style. Hiruzen taught him better than that. At least he preached it. Sometimes Naruto wondered if his grandfather was as innocent as he made himself out to be. Judging from Asuma's mouth, it was nowhere near the case. No point in dwelling on that right now, let's just relax. Right after he said that and had settled deeper in the hot water, Naruto saw someone perched above the bamboo. He was somewhat clumsily using the walls as both a viewpoint and cover, but his back was totally exposed to Naruto. Maybe he wasn't expecting anyone to see him from the men's side, maybe he expected no one to care. Naruto for one was not either of those, and the thought of a pervert spying on women bothered him. It bothered him even more when the thought crossed his mind that someone he might know very well, like Kurenai, could be on the other side and this man was getting to see her like that. No, he couldn't have that. With a combination of speed and finesse, Naruto emerged from the bath and got dressed prematurely. He might not be ruining just his experience in the springs that day with what he was about to do, but it had to be done. Naruto cracked his knuckles before jumping up onto the wall for himself. Carefully he approached so he didn't get seen by the women bathing or the suspect himself. Then, when he was close enough, Naruto decided to try a technique he had seen Kakashi so aptly demonstrate on Urata numerous times. 1,000 years of pain. With a good amount of power, Naruto sent Jiraiya flying with the invasive hit. It forced him into holding his behind in pain and wailing at the top of his lungs. All the women looked up to see what the commotion was, some of them screaming pervert and running for their towels. Oh, is that the cute Uzumaki boy? Is it? Hey, this is the women's bath. Go to your side, pervert. I don't mind, come on in cutie. Naruto had accidentally stood up to full height after sending the pervert away, revealing his presence to the women in the bath. He realized his fault and looked away, not seeing anything in particular. Two vocal groups got into an argument over whether he should be allowed to join them or not, much to his embarrassment. It seemed the women who found Naruto attractive were winning as a collective sigh of disappointment could be heard when Naruto leapt away to catch the escaping Jiraiya. Hold it right there, pal. Naruto stopped Jiraiya who, albeit was trying to leave the scene, was doing so extremely slowly with hands guarding his rear. Hey, you're the asshole that hit me in the. You were peeping on the women in the bath. So, that isn't an excuse to do this to another man. He pointed at his butt, clearly incensed. Naruto placed his hands on his sides, not backing down. It was then that he recognized who the man was from Hiruzen. His grandfather had told him a lot about his students and Naruto could easily identify Jiraiya from the detailed description, right down to his perverted preferences. Jiraiya of the Sannin. Upon hearing his title, the old hermit seemed to recover with a knowing smirk. So, his name preceded him even with the younger generation. Understandable, considering his fame reached even the smallest, most influential circles and corners of the world. I see you've heard of me, what can I do for such an impressionable young ninja like yourself? He struck a heroic pose but was quickly rebuked. Oh, nothing, just making sure I had the right name to report to the Hokage. See ya. Before he could jump away, Jiraiya cried out for him to stop. Wait a minute, I can't afford to get caught. I mean the Hokage isn't expecting me for a while. Can't we work something out? Naruto didn't seem like he was buying it. Jiraiya had to up the ante, even if it meant giving up some of his valuable research time. He supposed it would be worth it to teach Minato's kid something, he owed that much. Alright kid, how about this? Let me show you a few techniques. Around a month later, Konoha Stadium. Nice place. Naruto walked the stands with Asuma and Kurenai, standing in awe of the building. He had actually never been there before. The experience was totally unique now that the place was littered with civilians and shinobi alike, waiting impatiently for the matches to start. Most of the genin had already arrived, save for who some argued was the most important, Sasuke Uchiha. That also meant Kakashi was missing. Naruto had no doubt the two were still training and would arrive on time for the match, all that effort wouldn't be put to waste. For now he was fine with being near his loved ones and trying to enjoy the chaotic atmosphere. Asuma and Kurenai sat down with Naruto in the middle, his eyes flicking over to the cage viewing area. The Hokage sat there joined by the cage. Two of the most influential people in the world, Naruto watched in awe, hoping one day he too could sit in that seat. Loud isn't it? Asuma yelled over the din of cheering. Kurenai didn't much care for it, preferring a calm and quiet viewing instead. She knew it was no better where Hinata and Kiba, or anyone for that matter, were viewing from, so she had to tough it out. Naruto was somewhat with her, but he could bear it. He wanted to see how Urata and Sasuke did and how the rest of the genin turned out, considering that Naruto missed a majority of the matches. They watched as Sasuke's match was delayed, forcing them to quickly move to Shikamaru and Temari. The Nara fought well, but in the end he gave up halfway on a technicality. Come on Shikamaru. You could have finished it. That boy needs to learn one of these days he can't leave things half done. Maybe he really didn't have enough chakra to continue. Kurenai suggested, trying to keep Asuma from biting his student's head off. I think that is Nara laziness, Kurenai-chan. Naruto pointed out with a smile, earning a nod from Asuma. The next match was one Naruto had been waiting for, Urata versus Neji. These two had some animosity since the academy, but why, Naruto did not know. Seeing a Hyuga defend against Urata's manipulation technique would be interesting. Since rumors had gone around over what Urata could do, not all the bets were on Neji. The people were loud, anxious to see which one might win. It turned out to be a bloody close affair, as expected. As things turned out, Urata wasn't a one-trick pony, although he did use his kunai attack often to keep Neji on his toes. The Hyuga's defense was too strong though, which forced Urata to use techniques that resembled tricks or pranks to fight with. He had some skill in stealth, but Neji's eyes nullified that advantage, which forced him to use unconventional methods. Explosive tags hidden underground, clones, puppet daggers and every type of ninja tool was thrown at Neji, but he somehow weathered through. Both of them were dead tired by the end, which as far as Naruto was concerned meant they were closely matched, something Neji had claimed was untrue before the match started. Urata landed the final blow by using his element to traverse underground undetected, landing a blow on Neji's jaw. It was quiet for a while before Naruto and a few others started clapping, giving way to a roar of applause and other uproar. Naruto was proud of Urata's progress and knew he could only go forward from there. Kurenai saw Naruto's look upon the Genin's victory and smiled. It was almost as if it was Naruto himself winning. He seemed ecstatic. Through more delay tactics, Sasuke's match had finally come on as the final event. Through the latest roar of boos came a puff of smoke in the arena. Kakashi had arrived with Sasuke in tow, ready just in time for his match. Guy quickly met up with her and led her to his side of the stands, giving Naruto a bit of disappointment. He had hoped to be the one to see Kakashi first and fill her in on what happened with Team 7. Don't worry so much, Naruto. Asuma held his shoulder, shaking it roughly. Guy doesn't stand a chance, he just can't see it. Naruto tried to tell his brother he was wrong but was stunned when Kurenai joined in. He's right, Naruto. Kakashi isn't interested in Guy whatsoever. I almost feel bad for him. He knew there was nothing he could say to get them to stop teasing, so he just settled in for the long haul. Sasuke and Gaara began their fight with nothing extraordinary, although there was something about Gaara that bothered Naruto. It was just a familiar feeling, a sense that there were unseen parallels between the two of them. It wasn't long before Sasuke overzealously revealed his new technique, the Chidori. Making use of their shared lightning elements, Kakashi must have decided to teach him it, hoping it would help him against Orochimaru. Naruto wasn't so sure that was a good idea. Sasuke wasn't as easy to please as she thought. His aggressiveness in battle was enough to draw the attention of both Kage and many shinobi watching. They wondered if Gaara's dome of sand was enough to hold back the chirping attack. Soon they realized that it was not enough as Sasuke punctured the shield and attacked Gaara, spurring his transformation to occur sooner. That was much to the horror of the present Tsunade, knowing the plan was already on the rocks. Naruto stood up, Gaara's blood-curdling scream visibly shaking him. What the hell was going on down there? What was Gaara doing in that ball? It wasn't hard for him to sense a chakra buildup. Sasuke was forced back as sand spikes launched out in a defensive measure, catching him in the cheek. Before he could formulate a counterattack, Gaara dropped his sand dome and revealed he was already transforming into the inner beast. He made his way out of the arena walls with great speed, leaving Sasuke and the rest of the crowd in surprise. That was when something odd happened. Naruto watched as all sound left the arena and was replaced by sweet, serene silence coupled with countless feathers tickling his consciousness. It would be enough to lull him into sleep, but Kurenai had taught him to recognize genjutsu like that. He held up a ram hand sign and focused his chakra, dispelling the technique. Release. Naruto opened his eyes to see an Oto ninja coming right at his face, kunai in hand. Naruto. Asuma yelled, seeing the danger. In slow motion, Naruto arched his back so that the attack passed harmlessly over his body. With his body low enough to touch the ground, Naruto used his hands as leverage and launched his feet up. They connected with the Oto ninja's stomach, sending him right into the ceiling, unconscious from the impact. Naruto flipped backward while at the same time revealing his chakra blades, ready to defend himself. He risked a glance behind him and saw Asuma and Kurenai back to back on the stairs, fending off more of the attackers. Quickly he rejoined them, fending off the enemy shinobi as they attacked in waves. What the hell is going on? Naruto asked as he landed a slice on an Odo Chunin before they could get near Kurenai. Looks like we're under attack, some sort of genjutsu knocked everyone else out. Asuma replied, breathing in air for a Kaden technique. All around them was chaos as leaf and sound attacked one another, blurs sparking above the stands. Smoke covered the cage stand, preventing them from seeing whether Hiruzen was alright or not. They had a sinking feeling in their stomachs, but watched as Anbu traveled the rooftops in that same direction. Have to leave it to them. Naruto and Asuma thought, too preoccupied with their own battles. The Suna Junin had been cut off from his students by Genma down below. No other Suna shinobi had been seen, but it was safe to say they were in league with Odo. Sasuke had taken off after Gaara soon after the invasion began, preventing anyone from easily tracking him. Arata and Sakura must have been with Kakashi, they had to be, Naruto hoped. Aoba leapt onto their stand and made their triangle formation into a square. The Tokubetsu Junin used a kunai and Kaden techniques to keep the enemies at bay while trying to relay intel. Looks like the entire village is getting hit, these guys. He kicked another hooded figure away. Are everywhere. Same with Suna. Hard to tell what their targets are, but it looks like they are after us first. Made sense. Civilians didn't pose any threat in a shinobi village. If you could hunt down the shinobi of the village, the battle and possibly the war was effectively over. Most of the fighting is moving away from us, I think. Summons are trying to break through the west wall, not sure how long it will hold. Asuma looked around and saw that the Odo shinobi were focusing their attack at the stadium, meaning whatever they wanted was there. He also saw Kakashi struggling to defend a few genin on her own. Guy seemed to be everywhere at once, but he couldn't help her in time. Naruto, go across and help Kakashi. It looks like she needs it. Naruto looked at his older brother and saw he was being serious. No more teasing. This was real. They were really in a war and he needed to stay focused if he wanted to stay alive and protect the village. For now, he had to help Kakashi. Understood. Aoba. Kurenai. We'll hold here and mop up. Understood. Naruto leapt over the railing, putting all his power in the jump. Behind him Asuma and the others remained to finish off those Odo shinobi left, but all around him battles raged. It had all happened so fast, Naruto was still trying to process the situation. What the hell is going on? For the third time he had to repeat himself, it felt all the more appropriate. When the invasion started, Sakura and Arata were with her watching the matches proceed. The boy had come up from the contestant box to complain to her about Gaara. At first, she ignored his pleas because of Sasuke's overall advantage. When things took a turn for the worse as Sasuke landed the first hit with Chidori, then she knew something might be wrong. Then the genjutsu kicked in and Arata went out like a light, but Sakura recognized the attack and was able to stay awake. Unfortunately, her skill made her a target. With her speed, Kakashi was able to keep them off of Sakura and kill a good number. The amount of enemies was too overwhelming though, and she was being forced back. Guy had gone off to pick up the slack in another area, believing Kakashi could handle herself. That much was true, but she had to watch over Sakura too. Damn it, Guy. Of all times too. Kakashi ducked under a slice that would have hit her face and impaled the enemy with a kunai from below. He toppled over, his lifeless body resting near Arata's prone form. There were too many to face with just knives, she would have to use her chakra. Two of the Odo shinobi leapt toward Sakura, forcing the Junin's attention away from her own well-being. From outside the corner of her vision, a Suna shinobi prepared to deliver a powerful blow. Kakashi was in the middle of twisting her body toward Sakura, lightning chakra crackling in her hand, when reinforcements arrived. Kunai embedded themselves in the backs of the two Odo shinobi. It sent them down to the ground like dead weights, just a few feet from Sakura. The young genin cowered in fear but looked around for her savior, only to see the enemy behind her sensei. Kakashi saw Sakura's reaction but knew she wouldn't be able to turn fast enough. Naruto appeared right in front of Kakashi, his face pressing against her chest. His arms reached around behind her and the faint whine of his chakra blades could be heard. Warm liquid hit her back and neck, and she knew that Naruto had sliced the enemy clean through. They stayed connected like that for a moment too long, and Naruto stepped back with a slightly red face. Sorry, Kakashi. Kakashi didn't even think twice about it. She had never been so happy to see a friendly face. You saved us, Naruto. The two Konoha shinobi turned as more Oto and Suna shinobi approached. If they couldn't match quality, the enemies could make up for it in quantity. Naruto readied his chakra blades while Kakashi grabbed two kunai, one for each hand. It was time for a counterattack. Now that she had a competent partner, they could get something done. Time to cut down the enemy numbers. Naruto, you take left. Understood. Asuna shinobi went through hand signs to prepare a jutsu. They didn't have to worry about collateral damage, a clear advantage over Konoha when it came to ninjutsu. Maybe their techniques would kill civilians or genin, but as long as it killed the enemy, it was worth the sacrifice. You guys don't. Before he could even complete his taunt, Naruto disappeared in a blur and Kakashi released one of her kunai at blinding speed. The blade impaled the would-be jutsu user in the head and, before his partners could realize the danger, the Junin was in the middle of their formation. Her kunai sunk deep into one of their abdomens, right below the iron plate inside the vest. Kakashi's other hand gathered lightning chakra, a lethal amount, and grabbed another one's arm. The man didn't even get to scream in agony before his life left him. The last one, an Oto shinobi, was in the middle of turning to face her when Kakashi pulled her dagger from the enemy's back. Suddenly, a devastating kick sent him flying out of the stand and into the arena wall on the opposite side. Kakashi saw Naruto recover from the taijutsu strike and noticed that he had gotten done with the left flank. 3 more enemies lay in a pool of their own blood, left where they dropped. He was getting better and better. Perhaps there was no better place for Naruto to show his skills than in a war. It bothered her for a moment, as if she thought the boy would remain innocent. Something about Naruto made it seem like he would fit better among friends than covered in blood. She had to admit though, the tenacious almost feral look he wore during fighting was almost attractive. Kakashi! Guy shouted, landing a few feet away. A lifeless Oto shinobi hung underneath his arm, his neck broken. The body was discarded as the taijutsu user approached his rival, concern laced in his voice. Are you alright? I thought you said you could handle yourself. It was tougher than I expected. I had hoped they would ignore Sakura. Guy looked over and saw the girl hiding behind a few chairs. Ah, sorry. I thought it was just you and me. Kakashi looked over the Junin's shoulder and saw Naruto watching the stadium. Down below, Genma was locked in combat with Baki, the Suna Genin team leader. Sasuke was nowhere to be seen, nor were any of the other contestants still remaining. He began to fear the worst, that the enemy had gotten to them first. If it hadn't have been for Naruto, things might not have turned out well. Guy turned to Naruto, but the blonde's mind lay elsewhere. Nice work, Naruto-kun. Your manly youth burns brightly once again, protecting Kakashi. Why, if I had a medal I would. Guy, enough of that. Kakashi walked past her overbearing friend to stand near the railing. So, Sasuke had gone off in pursuit of Gaara. Alone, that wouldn't bode well for the Uchiha, regardless of the training they did. It was clear now the redhead was important to Suna's war effort, and that made fighting him all the more dangerous. They would need to do more than organize a counterattack in the stadium if they wanted to help the village. Preventing Gaara from escaping seemed to be the task at hand. Sakura. The girl heard her sensei call out to her and watched the older ninja approach. Wake up, Arata. We'll need his help. While Sakura prepared to dispel the genjutsu affecting her teammate, Kakashi bit her thumb and began going through hand signs. It would be impossible for them to track down anyone in that chaos, so she would have to bring in an expert. She had just the dog in mind. Kuchiyos. Naruto and Guy observed Kakashi's summon reveal itself. A small dog with a blue vest and Konoha Hitai 8 tied to its forehead. At the same time, Arata stirred from his sleep. He seemed to be quite irritated. Whether it was from being tricked or woken up was hard to say. What the hell? He looked around, seeing Sakura first. Pinky. What the hell's going? A fist slammed into his forehead and sent him flying back into the opposite wall. Idiot. I told you not to call me by that stupid name. Sakura shook her fist, looking so angry at her fellow genin it was almost comedic. Ah. He held his head in the bruising spot. Why do you have to be so? Arata. Naruto's deep voice called out to him. The blonde had his arms crossed, his face trying its best to retain a serious expression. Don't finish that sentence. There are bigger things you need to focus on. Oh yeah. He remembered how his vision dimmed after seeing a bunch of feathers. He must have fallen asleep. Arata. Sakura. Listen up. Kakashi said. Her voice had a sense of urgency to it. Sasuke has gone after Gaara, alone. The two genin looked surprised before they both settled on an appropriate emotion. They both knew who Gaara was and just how dangerous he could be, if the demonstration against Lee was anything to go by. Sakura was appropriately terrified that her crush had gone off alone and could be hurt. She didn't even want to think of any other possibilities. Sasuke. The girl muttered, concerned. Arata, on the other hand, clenched his fists in anger. There they were preaching about teamwork during the first and second exam, and then Sasuke up and leaves them behind. What the hell kind of a teammate was he? Maybe they didn't get along so well in the academy because they were so different, but they were shinobi now. They were supposed to work together, because if they didn't, it could be the difference between life or death. If Sasuke kept up with reckless actions like that, he might end up on the dead side. Not that Arata could say much to reckless actions, but still. Baka. What the hell was that guy thinking? Oi. Both of you. Now isn't the time to think about pointless things. Naruto shouted at them, taking on the sudden role of a leader. If you want to do something useful for Sasuke and the village, listen up. Kakashi and Guy could barely hide their smiles. It wasn't often a chunin, especially a new one like Naruto, showed any kind of backbone when it came to leadership. The teamwork exercises Team 7 had participated in with him must have made him feel particularly attached to their well-being. It also meant he knew when they were listening and when they were wasting time. Thank you, Naruto. Kakashi said, her hand resting on his shoulder. She turned to her students who waited for orders. Pakun will guide you two to Sasuke, where you all will work together to fight Gaara. The dog nodded, his nose already locked on the scent. This is an A-rank mission, so act like it. Don't do anything stupid. Arata. I mean you. The tan boy scratched his cheek bashfully. Sure, he wasn't the most cautious genin in the world. He liked to take risks, it was in his blood. Living off the streets of Konoha with nothing but the clothes on your back did that to a person. Don't worry, sensei, I'll keep an eye on him. Sakura said, a balled fist raised high in the air. Good, now. Kakashi looked at her ninkin and nodded. Pakun. Go. On cue, Guy created a gaping hole in the wall behind them. Not wasting any time to gawk, the tracker dog and Haruno ran out into the village. Arata soon followed with a not-so-gentle push from Naruto. Now that the younger ninja were on the move and away from immediate harm, the three left turned back to the rest of the stadium. The fighting had slackened since the onset of the invasion, and it seemed as if Konoha was starting to turn things around. In the distance they could see Kurenai and Aoba finishing off the last of their enemies, but Asuma was out of sight. A slight tinge of concern crossed Naruto's mind, but he knew his brother was tough enough to handle the enemy. The fighting wasn't only in the stadium after all, and the rest of the village needed all the help it could get. We need to focus on cleaning up here. Kakashi said. Her eyes seemed to dance around as it tried to count the enemies remaining. Look, Kakashi. Enemy reinforcements. Soon a shinobi landed on the rooftop of the stadium as they too began to count the number of hostiles still alive. Well, let's give them a warm welcome. Naruto jumped onto the guardrail and began to go through hand signs. Kakashi-sensei, care to join in? She smirked and began going through her own seals, catching onto the blonde's idea. Futon. Daitapa. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. As if it was right out of their nature training exercise, the student and mentor pulled off a perfect wind-fire combo. Naruto's gust of air was guided by his hands, leading it straight for the platoon of enemy shinobi. Just as the first wave hit them, the fire enveloped the attack and created a maelstrom inferno that burned the bodies to a crisp. Oh, nice combo. Guy gave them a thumbs up and iconic smile. When more enemies began to swarm them, it seemed they agreed with the sentiment. It was so nice that they needed to be stopped, immediately. Naruto revealed his trench knives and launched into the air, meeting the enemy halfway. Their weapons clashed and metal sparked, but the Odo shinobi only had one kunai to block with. The blonde was easily able to avoid their sloppy guard as the two tumbled in midair down to the arena floor. He cut a deep gash into his opponent's stomach. Goo. Naruto's adversary groaned in pain as the blonde oriented himself so that his feet were touching the enemy's chest. See ya. Naruto kicked off with all his might to send himself back into the air. The power behind his legs sent the already dying Oto Nin into the ground, creating a small crater from the impact. Kakashi and Guy on the other hand let the enemy come to them, throwing kunai at their vulnerable position in the air. A few went down, but most were able to land on their viewing platform and engaged the two in close combat. Many of them discovered too late that it was they whom were at a disadvantage against Guy's strength and Kakashi's speed. Goken. The bowl-cut Junin sent a devastating punch to an enemy's jaw that sent them into the already battered stone wall. Guy leaned back and easily avoided an overextended kunai thrust, at the same time grabbing the enemy's collar. With great strength he threw the Oto Nin at his fellows, creating an impromptu bowling session. The entire enemy formation was sent flying, much to Guy's happiness. I think that. He paused for dramatic effect, his smile threatening to blind any who gaze upon it. Was a strike. Quit messing around, Guy. Kakashi growled as she held Asuna Shinobi in a headlock. With one quick movement of the arm, his neck was broken. She dropped the body to the floor and twisted around with lightning-fast speed, ducking underneath the wind attack. Kakashi sent a devastating kick to the enemy's stomach that sent them flying through the hole Guy made in the wall. Another one, a particularly large sound ninja, came barreling toward her with the intent to kill. Before she could even get into a guard stance, the man's eyes widened and he fell to his knees. In his back was a number of shuriken and kunai, and even farther behind him was Naruto with his hands in the snake seal. Must be his weapon manipulation technique. Kakashi thought, lowering her kunai for a moment. Naruto smiled at his teacher, reassuring her he was watching her back. He was surprised when she quickly brought up her kunai and threw it at him. It sailed over his head and some blood spilled on his back. He turned to see Asuna Ninja now toppling over, the knife stuck in his neck. That makes us even. Kakashi gave him a smile. For now at least. The three Konoha shinobi rallied together and watched as Kurenai and Aoba made it over to their side. The two Junin looked like they had it tough holding down their end of the stadium, cuts and soot littered their uniforms. Kurenai-sensei, where's Asuma? Naruto asked, grabbing her attention. He went after Shikamaru, who was apparently dragged after Sasuke by Shino. Speaking of whom? The Genjutsu mistress looked around for a moment. Kakashi, where are your students? I thought they were with you. I sent them after Sasuke to act as reinforcements, but I'm glad they'll have help. There is no telling what they might be going up against. Guy looked at Aoba with an inquisitive gaze. If anyone had information on the battle they didn't already know, it would be him. The Tokubetsu Junin noticed his look and tried to collect his thoughts. As far as I know, Jiraiya-sama is mounting the defense against the enemy summons to the west. There also seems to be an effective counterattack happening with the Inoshika Cho group leading the charge. No telling when help will get here though. Baki and Genma had already fallen back, their fight long since a stalemate. From what they could tell, they were the only shinobi still awake, or alive for that matter, in the stadium outside of the Anbuin cage. Let's get to higher ground, perhaps we can get a better understanding of the situation. Guy suggested, to which the rest agreed. The Konoha shinobi leapt up onto the roof and got a better view of their village. More specifically, they got a better look at the damage. All around smoke and fire erupted from the buildings down below. Figures ran to and from the buildings, either there to help or harm. All the civilians should have been evacuated by now, and that meant they could take the enemy on full force. Off in the distance, they could see what looked like three large snakes fighting against an equally large toad. It seemed Jiraiya had already made an entrance. A faint rumbling turned their attention toward where the village ended and a vast forest began. It was in the general direction that Pakun and the rest had gone in, which immediately concerned Naruto and Kakashi. That was when they saw some sort of beige creature emerge from the trees and tower over the area. What the hell is that? Aoba asked out loud. Dunno. It isn't ours. Right. Kurenai was equally confused, she had never seen anything like it. Looks like sand. Guy muttered, holding his chin in thought. Gaara. Naruto's mind flashed and he realized that there was more to that genin than he had first thought. Does this mean ease? Like me? Kyuubi remained silent as his Jinchuriki tried to figure out the answer. So far, the blonde had demonstrated enough skill that the beast didn't try to interfere much with his affairs. On occasions when it knew the kid would have trouble, the fox would flood his system with chakra, but otherwise remained content to sit and watch. There was no better way for Naruto to learn than to figure things out for himself. Besides, it was entertaining to watch his human brain try to comprehend such simple things. That thing, he muttered, putting the pieces together. It means Sasuke and the others failed to stop Gaara. The older shinobi looked at him in surprise. How did he know that? It was like he actually knew what that thing was. Naruto, explain. Kakashi asked in an even tone. She had come to rely on his judgment in battle. He might have been a bit excitable and aggressive, but when it came to situations like that, Kakashi knew he had a good reason to say something. Gaara, I think he's a Jinchuriki like me. And that, he pointed to the large monstrosity as it smashed its tail into the ground, is what his tailed beast looks like. Considering the Suna Genin's unique abilities and raw power, it was a possibility. Not only that, but it was hard to miss the familiar feeling of such a dark, negative chakra release. Those who had seen a tailed beast or had been in one's vicinity could easily recognize the killing intent, the literal pressure it put on them. This could get dangerous, Kurenai murmured, concern gripping her. Aoba and Guy were equally speechless as they tried to comprehend the situation. Only Naruto and Kakashi seemed to show any form of calm or preparedness. Kakashi. Naruto looked at her, worry creasing his brow. Arata and Sakura. They are in danger, along with the rest of them. We have to do something. It would be too irrational to just run off in an attempt to help without knowing all the facts. Before she could try to ease Naruto's conscience, the blonde made up his own mind. That was when she cursed his aggressively protective emotions. Naruto leapt from the rooftop and headed straight for the towering Shukaku, ignoring the shouts coming from behind. There was no way he could leave Team 7 and the others defenseless. With the techniques he had learned, there must have been something he could do. Naruto. Kakashi swore and leapt after him, but was forced to stop on a nearby rooftop as more Oto and Suna shinobi showed up. They effectively separated the two groups, leaving Naruto to fend for himself. Whatever help he planned to lend Sasuke and the others, it would have to be enough. It was Kakashi's duty to protect Naruto, and it only frustrated her more that she was being stopped by these obstacles. Gathering lightning chakra again, she sent the enemy a deadly glare as she readied her Sharingan. Out of my way. The two sides charged one another with the intent to kill. Their battle was just beginning, but Arata's was just finishing up. 000. It wasn't long in their pursuit of Sasuke that Pakun told them they were being followed. Of course, the enemy wouldn't let them escape so easily. For a while they tried to outrun them, but the other group was large and well conditioned for pursuit tactics. If they kept going at the speed they were moving, Sakura and Arata would be overwhelmed. That was when he volunteered to stay behind. His teammate tried to protest, but he knew that if anyone had a chance of stopping them, it was himself. No offense to Sakura, but she wasn't cut out for combat. That had become apparent since the second exam, regardless of her ability to fend off the sound shinobi. Besides, Arata had a plan to go with his trump card. In an odd tactic, he began to litter the ground and surrounding area with his kunai and shuriken. After he had emptied his thigh and waist pouch of all the weapons, save for one kunai, he waited in the forest clearing. Sure enough, the Odo battalion took his challenge and 8 of them appeared just a few feet away. They took in the sights, baffled at the appearance of so much weaponry. Not just that, they couldn't see any obvious tactic he could have, as none of the weapons seemed to be. Alright kid, looks like it's the end of the line for you. Arata smirked as he shrugged his shoulders. I think you guys are a little overconfident. You are outnumbered after all. They couldn't hold back their laughter. This genin made a good jokester. Good one. Next time you'll tell us Konoha's kinjutsu. Arata slowly raised his hands above his head, smiling as he did so. Well, I don't know about any of that stuff. But let me show you a real trick. If they were paying any attention, the sound shinobi would have noticed the weapons were beginning to move on their own. They approached Arata. One revealed a kunai that he planned to drive deep into the kid. He didn't know why Suna wanted him dead, but apparently Orochimaru said the same thing. An order was an order. Time to die. The Oto shinobi was right in front of him, about ready to send the kunai straight into his skull. Garatsuki no Tetsubuyo. Having finally given a name to the technique, Arata decided to give it an appropriate christening. Blood stained the forest floor as the Odo shinobi found themselves impaled with dozens of iron projectiles. They fell, altogether, to the ground with an assortment of grunts of pain or exasperated sighs. That was what happened when you underestimated an enemy shinobi. Arata fell to his knees, his chakra almost completely drained. It was just like the time he fought Tenten and controlled her dozens and dozens of weapons, his chakra suffered greatly. There was little chance he could gather the strength to keep going and help Sakura, but he had to try. Going somewhere, brat. The cold voice froze his entire body. There must have been another enemy shinobi, waiting in the distance in case something went wrong. Now that the genin had thoroughly exhausted himself, the ninja showed himself. He had his own weapon ready and was not about to let the kid try the same technique. So this is it, yeah. Arata wore a sad smile, trying to find something to regret so he could feel as cliché as possible. Well, guess I can regret not getting to see Kakashi-sensei. I mean, come on. How Sasuke can just ignore that? Arata, get down. Snapped from his lecherous thoughts, the kid did as the commanding voice said and covered his head. Naruto appeared on top of the genin's back, arms tucked into his chest. With speed the enemy couldn't follow, he sent his arms flying out with the blades cutting deep into the Odo shinobi's chest. That was when they tried to retreat by leaping back. Ah, you bast. His eyes widened as Naruto's speed proved greater and the wind blades made a cutting motion for his neck. That was the last thing the enemy saw before his own head went flying, separated from its body. Naruto stored his weapons and ran back to check on Arata, who was hyperventilating in fear. Calm down, Sato. The battle's over. Why yeah, I know. Arata cursed himself, trying to control his breathing was surprisingly difficult. Oi. You shouldn't worry about me. Sakura. And Sasuke are in trouble. He wheezed out, surprising Naruto with his selflessness. Yeah, I'll go save them as soon as you calm down. Naruto's hand rested comfortably on his back in an attempt to ease his tension. After a little while, Arata had gotten himself back under control. Naruto gave him instructions on where to fall back to before continuing on. They had little time to waste on pleasantries. Arata did wish him luck before he left. Knowing the monster that laid ahead, Naruto would need it. As it turned out, Naruto had more than just a bit of luck on his side. 000. A few days later. Konohagakure. 000. We have need of a leader right now, Jiraiya. If you won't do it, who will? Well, if you have to have a Sannin, I suppose I can get you one. It would be a boring mission, but seeing Tsunade may give him more research than he could handle. Besides, it was the least he could do after the third sacrificed himself in battle. If Jiraiya had taken the situation in Konoha a bit more seriously, there would have been a chance the entire conflict could have been avoided. At least, that was what he liked to tell himself. Tsunade. Kaharu questioned with Homura by her side, looking equally curious. It was true she would be an invaluable asset to the village, but first she would have to be willing to return. Not only did her stubbornness play an issue, but no one knew where she was. Ever since the death of her loved ones, she had slowly lost confidence in the village until she finally gave up and left. A pitiful display by the council's opinion, but they couldn't very well stop such an influential and powerful kunoichi like Tsunade. After all the casualties we sustained, she's almost a necessity, right? Jiraiya asked, rhetorically. Well, I'll get her back for you. I was planning on leaving soon anyway. Homura deliberated with himself for a moment before looking at Jiraiya with a careful gaze. Very well, Jiraiya, but we will send an Anbu platoon to support the mission. It is of the utmost importance to the village it succeeds. That did not sound good, at all. A group of porcelain-masked babysitters, babysitting one of the Sannin of all people. What would it do to his reputation? If you asked someone else, they might say it couldn't be made worse. Ah, no thanks. He waved his hand in front of them, shaking his head. An idea formed in his head though, and with a conniving smirk he looked at the annoyed council. There was no way they could refuse him considering the favor he was doing them. There is one guy the first wouldn't mind taking along, if it's all right with you. The two elders waited there impatiently through his dramatic pause Jiraiya had created. They were glad that they did not have to deal with the Toad Sage when he was a child. He was already bad enough to drive them slowly senile. Naruto Uzumaki. What do you say? Their faces hardened, surprising the Sannin. If anything, he expected them to be happy to get rid of the kid. I'm afraid we will have to deny that request. Jiraiya practically flopped over in distress. Confusion laced his features as Koharu delivered the statement with nothing but truth. Why? Was all he could think to blurt out. Homura responded for his partner as he hoped to finish this silly conversation as soon as possible. Naruto Uzumaki has proven to be a capable chunin and served the village well during the invasion. Surely you heard of his actions in the stadium and the defeat of Suna no Gara, the Ikibi container. Jiraiya nodded. Hell, he probably saw all of it from the top of his summon. Koharu nodded. The Jinchuriki was becoming a powerful shinobi. He would be an effective deterrent to war in Konoha's weakened state, which would require him to stay inside the village. There was also the chance of him being harmed if taken out of the village, which was something they could not allow to happen. Ironically, the Kyuubi was the Leaf's guardian in harsh times like those. You have got to be kidding me. Jiraiya held his head in his hand, trying to figure out a way to talk them out of it. So, we will arrange the Anbu platoon to meet with you within the hour. Don't waste any time. Well, that conversation ended quickly. 000. Konohagakure. Will of Fire Monument. 000. Naruto and dozens of other shinobi attended the Sandame's funeral. All of them wore dark clothing of some sort, their heads bowed in respect. The eyes of those there could not bear to look upon the Sandame's face, for they knew if they did, tears would be inescapable. The sky filled with dark clouds as it began to rain. It seemed even Kami wept for the village hidden in the leaves. Asuma and Kurenai stood on either side of Naruto in the front row of shinobi. One by one, they all went up and placed a white lily on his memorial. It was heartbreaking to think that the man so many had looked up to as not just a leader, but a father or grandfather, was dead. Yes, he died protecting the village and would be remembered forever with honor, but what of the feelings he left behind? Naruto couldn't take it and began to quietly sob as tears fell from his eyes. Some noticed and all were sympathetic as they could barely hold back the same feeling. Asuma stood there, resolute. He was putting on a strong act, but for those close to him, they knew he was close to breaking. In front him, with his hands on either shoulder, stood Konohamaru. The boy had been crying before they had even arrived and found little solace in his uncle's arms. Kurenai saw her little brother begin to cry and motioned to comfort him. It was already difficult enough for her to bear. What Naruto must have been going through was surely worse. The only man to take me in, and now he's dead. My grandfather is dead. What the hell did I train so hard for? He felt like giving up. Hiruzen had always been there, watching him from a distance. Whenever he would falter, Hiruzen would be there to get him back on his feet with a word of advice. If there was ever indecision in Naruto's actions, Hiruzen would have been there to guide him. Now it was all gone. His fists balled in pain. It would be difficult to ignore this pain in his chest. It was the hardest pain to mend after all. An arm wrapped around his shoulders, pulling him backward. He opened his eyes to see a flash of silver and then nothing but black as his face was enveloped in cloth. Kakashi's left arm held Naruto close to her body while her right hand held the back of his head. She was unable to watch him cry alone, her face softening with a familiar sense of sympathy. After all, it was impossible for her to forget all those that had passed before her. All the mistakes she made that led to those close to her dying, one by one. If she could help it, she wouldn't let Naruto fall that far. Not alone. It's okay, Naruto, she whispered into his ear, taking on an almost motherly tone. The Sandames will live on. In all of us. Naruto's arms wrapped around Kakashi's slender frame, trying to find comfort in her warmth. The pain in his chest slowly began to recede as the two remained connected. Was this why the third was so adamant they work together? Did he know something like this would happen? The sun began to emerge, peeking over the Hokage monument. Kakashi looked up and smiled. This is his legacy. 000. It was an amazing feeling. Naruto smiled, scratching the back of his head in embarrassment. I never thought Kakashi-sensei would do that. She really made me feel better. What was it though? I just felt so comfortable. Like I could stay there forever. Naruto shook his head clear. He stood in front of the Will of Fire monument, in which the village's Hokage were buried. In front of him, the picture of the third stared resolutely back at him. It was as if the conversation was the most important thing in the world. Well, it meant a lot to Naruto to get the story off of his chest. I just wanted to say thanks. For everything. Naruto bowed before producing a big smile. I won't let you down, I promise. With that, Naruto turned on his heel and left the memorial. As much as he would have liked to spend the day there, he was sure there was something to do around the village. He had been working hard along with many other shinobi to rebuild, though their numbers had slackened. Konoha had missions to fulfill after all, and they couldn't afford to refuse any of them. That said, Naruto seemed to be exempt from any kind of work outside of the walls. It was an odd thing, especially for a Chunin. He walked the village streets and passed many civilians busying about. They were now the primary workforce in rebuilding that which was destroyed. Homes were prioritized first, then the merchant district and all that remained after. The shinobi had ensured in the opening few days of rebuilding that the military infrastructure was quickly rebuilt, which included the demolished West Wall. It felt like there was more he could be doing, but everywhere he looked it seemed everything was fixed. The progress was astounding. To Naruto, that said something about the resilience of the Leaf, not just the shinobi but the people too. From this realization came a proud smile that adorned his face as he walked to an unknown destination. The third had left behind a legacy to be proud of, he thought. His good mood came crashing down when a deep, familiar voice addressed him from behind. Oi! What the hell are you smiling about? Nico was standing there, hands in pocket. He was actually smiling, of all things. Naruto didn't share his sentiments, scowling. Hopefully the Junin would get the hint to leave him alone, but it seemed he had other plans. I'm not here to fight if that's what you were thinking. Naruto's guard failed to relax, which made the man frown. Wasn't it obvious appearing before the blonde was hard enough? It would have been easier to just fight the kid, he was starting to think. Listen. He combed his pink hair nervously, eyes staring away from Naruto. I wanted to apologize for what I said before. Naruto's eyes widened, he was not expecting that. What you did during the attack. That was something no one else could have pulled off. Nico admitted, his gray eyes filled with envy and a tinge of respect. That was something a true Konoha shinobi would do. Sorry for saying the things I did. He informally bowed his head in apology, it was the most he could get himself to do. Regretful or not, Nico still had some pride in his older age. Naruto was no longer frowning, his face neutral. It wouldn't be right to continue the conflict after Nico's apology. Something told him that he was telling the truth. I appreciate you saying this. But do me a favor. Nico looked at the blonde, listening. Apologize to Kakashi, not me. The older man frowned but nodded. He had disrespected Kakashi with his conduct, and the least he could do was repay Naruto by following through. Before they could part, an exasperated Ebisu came down from one of the rooftops in between them. It was as if he had seen a ghost with how fast he must have been running. The two other shinobi looked at him with concern, but he delayed no longer in telling them his message. The village has been infiltrated. Their eyes widened and suddenly their guard went up. Kakashi and the others fought them off, but she's in the hospital. Naruto was frozen, unable to think or say anything. Kakashi, in the hospital. Who had the power to do that? Better yet, where were they so he could kill them himself? Infiltrated. What the hell are the Anbu doing? Nico shouted in anger, with Ebisu turning to him. Nico, I came to find you and all the other Junin scattered around. There is an emergency meeting being held in the lounge. We are trying to decide how to proceed. The pink-headed man nodded and, before leaving, gave a comforting nod to Naruto. It must have been the toughest on him. Naruto. Ebisu turned to him, pressing his glasses back up the bridge of his nose. The elders have asked that you remain on standby until further notice. You might be part of the counter-response unit. Unfortunately, the village's Junin and Chunin were in short supply. Naruto wasn't the strongest ninja in the village, but he was respectable enough for them to consider him for the mission. Not only that, but they had but the faintest idea of who the attackers were or what their organization wanted, and by putting Naruto in the group, they might confirm many suspicions. Understood. I'll be at the hospital. The Tokubetsu Junin nodded before taking off to find more available shinobi. He wasn't sure what he was going to do, but there was no way he could leave Kakashi alone. Not after the third's death, not after the tears he shed. Not another precious person would be taken from him. 000. Konohagakure. Hospital. 000. Kakashi. The medical ninja attending to the comatose woman turned around in surprise. Naruto burst into the room and saw the sorry state the Junin was in. Concern washed over him as he rushed to her bedside, giving the medics little space to maneuver. Luckily, they had done most of what could be done already and were about ready to leave. It looked like Naruto needed some alone time after all. What happened to her? He asked, his voice quickly losing emotion. Inside, his body felt like it was being twisted around a knife. Severe mental exhaustion, most likely from sort of torture technique that affected the mind. Torture. The word sat on Naruto's tongue like poison. Will she? He couldn't even finish a damn sentence, he was so scared. We have done all we can for her. It is up to her mind to rest and recover on its own. That meant there was no telling how long she would be out. Naruto's fists wanted something to punch, but he immediately relaxed as the Junin shifted in her deep sleep. To calm down, he chose to focus his eyes on her. Past the condition she was in, just Kakashi as she was. Her vest had been removed, leaving her in the tight blue shirt she usually wore. The silver hair he had been so entranced by lay flat and scattered on the pillow beneath her head. Kakashi's left eye, usually covered by her hitai, was revealed but closed. The arms that had held him so tightly now lay limp at her sides. Kakashi. Naruto sat down in a nearby chair, just a few inches from her side. Hesitantly, he took her hand in both of his and was shocked at how cold she was. There was no way she was gone, right? The monitors nearby reminded him she was still alive, much to his relief. Naruto couldn't think of anything to say, so he continued to sit there for what felt like hours. The uncomfortable silence was only broken by the consistent beep of the medical equipment and the soft breathing that came from the two occupants. Finally, Naruto sighed and looked down at the ground to avoid watching her. It was like something was mocking him for his weakness every time he looked at her face. This was torture, but he wouldn't leave. No, he couldn't leave her side. I'm sorry, Kakashi. He bit his lip, enough to make it bleed. The door opened but he didn't bother to look who it was. Multiple footsteps told him it must have been important, but he couldn't summon the energy to check the new arrivals. It was like Kakashi's touch was a sweet poison, sapping him of strength. Naruto-kun. Guy shouted, a few feet from the bed. At his flanks were Asuma and Kurenai, and both looked wounded in some way. The Sarutobi's left arm was recently bandaged and Kurenai had a slight limp. It was enough to bring at least a little of Naruto's attention away from the bedridden Junin. What? He asked, still finding it hard to articulate words. We've been ordered to pursue Kakashi's attackers. They made sure we had to include you, so come on. The taijutsu master was surprisingly serious, his chipper attitude non-existent. That was all right though, because Naruto had finally found strength enough to stand. He would pay them back for what they did to Kakashi. It seemed the heavens were smiling upon him by gifting him this chance. Not just that. Sasuke Uchiha has left the village in pursuit of one of them. We need to make sure he remains out of harm's way. Kurenai added after receiving the hasty briefing. Naruto joined them by the door, surprise registering on his face. Sasuke had gone after them. Why? Do we know who these guys are? Naruto asked, and the Junin's faces seemed to darken. Kisame Hoshigaki of the Mist. Asuma announced, his frown turning into a scowl with the next name. And Itachi Uchiha of the Leaf. Both are nuke nin and highly dangerous. If Naruto had been surprised before, he was shocked now. Itachi Uchiha, the infamous Uchiha that left the village shortly after the massacre of his clan. Sasuke was his little brother, and it seemed there was some seriously bad blood between them. An odd sense of custodial responsibility came over Naruto, his eyes turning back to Kakashi. Whether he liked it or not, Naruto was part of Team 7. He had a duty to watch over them when Kakashi wasn't around. If Sasuke was in danger, that meant he would have to do something about that. How could he face the Junin if he failed to protect one of her students? He shuddered at the thought. Come on, We need to move fast if we want to reach them in time. Guy urged, indicating he follow them. The Junin took off down the hallway, leaving Naruto alone in the room. He laid one last look upon Kakashi, the woman who had given him strength in his worst times of need. It was Kakashi that had put all her faith in him when others would have abandoned him. Thanks to her, he was a powerful shinobi worthy of the Third's legacy. I'll be back soon, Kakashi. His eyes hardened. Just rest for a while and let me take a bit of your burden. Naruto ran out of the room in an attempt to catch up with the others. He wasn't about to let Itachi and Kisame get away with what they did to her. They would have to pay a heavy price. Whether it be now or some time in the future, he would have revenge. Lightning crackled, but found itself restrained by greater power. Sasuke's wrist was held in a tight embrace by Itachi. The boy had gotten stronger, but it was not anywhere near what his brother wanted. A new crack echoed through the forest and Sasuke screamed in pain as his wrist was broken. He was sent flying as Itachi kicked him straight in the gut, which sent him sailing through the trees. The two Akatsuki members watched him fly back, and Itachi thought back to how they got into that situation. They had been trying to leave the area around Konoha when Sasuke tracked them down. Their fight with Kakashi didn't last long, but it was enough for Itachi that it warranted a temporary retreat. Considering the knowledge she had on Akatsuki, presumably from Jiraiya, the elder Uchiha had wanted to capture her. Timely reinforcements kept them from doing that, and he had a feeling that Sasuke would not be the last to pursue them. Kisame hoped that was the case, as he had barely gotten started by the time Guy arrived. He wanted to see what the leaf had to offer, but deferred to Itachi's judgment and left with him. Somehow, Itachi always knew when something bad was about to happen. That was why Kisame was so surprised with what happened next. Hiya! Guy shouted as he grabbed Sasuke in midair and leapt back a bit. He set the Uchiha boy down to lean against a large tree trunk before returning his eyes to the Akatsuki present. It was a dangerous situation they were in, dealing with Itachi. His partner was a well-known criminal from the mist, which meant he would also be a tough fight. There was no time to be messing around, the Junin figured, and he stood up to full height with a serious look in his eye. From behind the tree came Asuma and Kurenai, their eyes locked on the enemy. It was time for a little payback. The leaf ninja formed up with each other and prepared themselves to face off against the others. You three again. Kisami's smile belied the aggression building within him. He was glad they showed up again. He wasn't done with them either. His hand rested on the wrapped sword that hung from his back, ready to go. Samahata growled in hunger, as if it sensed something interesting. Unfortunately, its master had different prey in mind and did not pay attention to the warning. I thought the leaf would exercise a bit of caution with its ninja after the conflict with Suna. Perhaps it was just wishful thinking. Itachi said in a bored, condescending tone. Asuma growled, his hands clenched around his chakra blades. Funny, coming from a traitor, that doesn't sound right. His eyes narrowed. You thought we were going to let you get away with what you did to Kakashi. Itachi met his glare with the Sharingan. His next statement felt like it was made of ice. That's nothing compared to what will happen to you, if you don't move out of our way. You caught us off guard the first time with your attack, but now we know how you operate. Kurenai warned, readying a kunai. Things won't go your way. Guy knew they could talk threats all day, but they had to be able to back them up sometime. Remember, don't look into his eyes. He grunted to the other two, who nodded in understanding. With that, Guy settled into his preferred stance of taijutsu and waited for the battle to begin. There was a reason they allowed the meeting to happen in that spot after all, aside from Sasuke's convenient landing. Come on, Naruto, it's your turn. From behind the tree, Naruto formed the ram hand sign and focused his chakra. Katsu. Hidden with a combination of genjutsu and careful skill, a dozen explosive tags ignited at once underneath the feet of the Akatsuki pair. With only the small sound of sizzling in the air to warn them, the explosives went off a moment later. A firestorm enveloped the enemies and prevented the leaf shinobi from confirming their deaths, as the heat and flames were too intense. There was a moment of quiet that settled over the forest as the attack settled to reveal a large crater, billowing black smoke into the sky. None of them were particularly skilled sensors, but the strength of the attack meant that if the two enemies had been caught in it, there was little chance they survived. Now, if they could only confirm it. A roar emerged from within the black cloud and a smirking Kisame came charging toward the trio, looking no worse for wear. His large blade rested over his shoulder as he came right for Asuma and Kurenai, intent on finishing their fight from before. Asuma cursed and knew he had to buy time for Naruto and Kurenai to prepare. He created a thin bit of wind chakra around his blades and blocked the aggressive strike before it could hit Kurenai. He. Nice attack there, we almost didn't see it coming. Bastard. As they began a contest of strength, the Genjutsu mistress went through hand signs and quickly disappeared. Kisame cursed when he realized the woman was already using her chakra to affect his bodily senses, as his sight and smell became useless. He would have to rely on Itachi to defeat her, but his partner had another problem to worry about. Itachi weaved in and out of strikes launched by Guy. They were just behind the pillar of smoke so that they were obscured from the other's view. There would be no support for either of them as long as the leaf could keep up the pressure. Another kick forced Itachi to retreat to a safe distance, but he realized he had to buy himself more time than that if he wanted to stay out of Guy's reach. His hidden arm came out of his sleeve with a full hand of shuriken, a weapon that the Uchiha was well versed in. He released them toward Guy, who was forced to stop his attack mid-step to dodge. Before the shuriken could pursue, however, they abruptly changed course and came after Itachi instead. His Sharingan swirled in response as he tracked the projectiles and knocked them away with a single kunai. The chakra buildup used to control the weapons was slow and very controlled. It was no wonder his eyes had a difficult time seeing the attack. Whoever did that knows their futon techniques. His opponent did not let up though, despite the moment of rest the attack offered. Itachi was again forced on the defensive as Guy kept on him, his attacks becoming faster and stronger by the second. It wouldn't do well for him to get hit by one of those kicks, or punches for that matter. In the meantime, Kurenai was finally able to bring her talent to bear on Kisame as she entrapped him in a genjutsu attack. His body stopped moving as his mind made him believe a large tree had wrapped itself around him. Without Itachi's counsel, there was no way he could escape from the attack. Asuma's distraction had paid off and the Junin was given a moment of respite. He allowed Kurenai the final blow with her kunai and he had faith she couldn't miss. That was when he noticed Kisami's face contort itself into a maddening grin, and then he knew something was terribly wrong. He. Thought you had me, didn't ya? He brought his sword around in a spinning arc to strike at Kurenai, whom had been creeping up from behind him. Shocked by his escape from her genjutsu, she was unable to react in time. Asuma cursed his luck and made to leap at the swordsman, but he knew he would be too late. I don't think so. Naruto appeared in front of Kurenai, his chakra blades at his sides. With all of his strength, he crashed the blades into Kisami's attack. The force behind it made him slide on the dirt. His speed had paid off though, and the attack missed its desired target and left the missing nin vulnerable. Asuma. Now. Kisame growled at the boy but turned his head to see what the other Junin was doing. He had ditched his blades and was now going through hand signs in a very fast pace. Kurenai and Naruto leapt away as Asuma cupped his hands around his mouth and released a concentrated shot of dust and wind. The blast enveloped the Akatsuki member, but they weren't done. In midair, Naruto flipped around and began going through hand signs of his own. Building up heat in his stomach, Naruto released a gust of flame from his mouth and ignited Asuma's attack into something even more devastating than before. An explosion covered the battlefield as the two attacks combined, and then an eerie quiet. Naruto and Kurenai landed and retreated back to where Asuma was, waiting for the outcome. To them it looked like the attack had been enough to take him down, but they had been mistaken about that before. They saw Guy fly back to where they were, sweat dripping down his brow. It seemed the fight between him and Itachi had been ended prematurely. Itachi must have sensed what had happened to Kisame and decided it was time to end things. Guy, what happened? Asuma asked his fellow Junin, but he just shook his head. 1 second we were in the thick of it, the next he was gone. Must be checking on Kisame. Kurenai reached into her thigh pouch and readied a kunai with an explosive tag. We can't let them rest, we should keep up the attack. Guy's hand held her back, though she sent him a glare. Our orders were to save Sasuke and gauge the enemy's ability. In our current state, the best we can settle for is a stalemate, so let's not do anything hasty. They were surprised Guy was thinking with a level head, Generally he would be pretty gung-ho about the situation. Maybe the experience he had with Kakashi gave him pause when fighting Akatsuki. If she could get taken down, maybe he doesn't want to see us all out of commission. Ha! The smoke cleared to reveal a hunched-over Kisame. Blood was pouring out of a dozen open wounds and bits of flesh were scattered all around. The Akatsuki robe was ripped to shreds on his upper body, the threads hanging loosely over his shoulder. He was hurt to the point he had to use his sword as a support to stand on. The frightening thing was that his wounds were slowly regenerating. Naruto saw the blade reacting in an odd way to the healing process. It began to shrink. What could that mean? Kisame, we are retreating, Itachi said from the swordsman's side in a no-nonsense tone. Yeah. Figured as much. The bigger man replied, a bit disappointed. Naruto gritted his teeth. Letting them go after the crimes they committed seemed wrong. Where had all of his strength gone to see the task through to the end? Something about Guy's commanding tone, combined with the shape their squad and Sasuke were in, made him stand down though. The enemy shinobi were allowed to disappear without any retribution. Guy turned back to pick up Sasuke while the other three breathed a sigh of relief. It was a tense standoff that really offered no true winner by the end of it. That inevitably led them to question their own abilities and whether they stood a chance against the organization in the future. We should head back and get Sasuke to the medical team. Looks like he needs it. The boy was unconscious, no doubt from the pain. Though it wasn't what he had in mind when he left the hospital, Naruto had been able to keep Sasuke safe. He had to wonder if that was really Itachi's goal, to kill his younger brother. Or was there something more to it that he wasn't seeing? In the end, what mattered was that the mission was a success. At least he would have something good to tell Kakashi when she woke up. Let it be soon. 000. A couple of weeks later. Konoha Hospital. 000. In a single room on the third floor, a shinobi was dutifully watching over his mentor. The staff there had gotten used to his presence, finding it odd when he wasn't nearby. His dedication was admirable if nothing else. Naruto found himself with a lot of free time since the fight against Akatsuki. It seemed the council didn't want to send him out of the village for some strange reason. Since Guy's team was unable to ascertain the exact objective of Itachi and Kisame, they couldn't risk sending Naruto out on his own. For now, he was on standby. That left him with very few things to do, so he often found himself with Kakashi in the hospital. There wasn't much he could do for her though, since he really didn't understand what the exact cause was to her coma, nor was he trained in medical ninjutsu of any kind. All he could do was sit or stand, waiting for her to awaken from what seemed like the dead. The doctor recommended he try talking to her. It could help wake her up if she heard a friendly voice, he said. Somehow, Naruto wasn't very convinced. That said, he really didn't like the idea of just standing around, doing nothing. So, Naruto would talk. He told Kakashi about the mission to rescue Sasuke. He told her about how Arata and Sakura were doing in their training, and when he couldn't think of anything related to work, he would tell her what he had for lunch that day. Occasionally, he would try and sneak in a plea for her to wake up, but he soon realized that it was only making him feel worse about her condition, so he quickly stopped. The village that day reflected any other normal day in Konoha. He had no way to know who or what was about to come through the door. When the door did slam open, he heard the click-clack of heels and figured one of the doctors had arrived to check on Kakashi. He paid it no mind. The sounds of the hospital had become the normality since Kakashi's check-in there. When the clicking stopped halfway inside, he knew something was off. Naruto was leaning against the wall, which meant the door was only in his peripheral vision. He knew someone was standing there, he just didn't know who. Who is this? A feminine voice asked. He hadn't heard that voice before, and he had come to recognize the doctors that cared for Kakashi. Naruto looked over at the door and saw a blonde woman with pigtails, no older than Kakashi herself. Another woman around the same age stood by her side, black hair cropped short. In her arms, she held a pig that wore a small robe and had a beaded necklace around its body. Who are these people? On the alert, Naruto got up from his lax stance and faced the new arrivals with a careful eye. There was no telling if Akatsuki, or any other organization that knew about the Sharingan user's abilities, would be willing to risk a kidnapping or assassination. After their infiltration of the village, anything was possible. Tsunade noticed the young man's legs spread a bit, his knees bent. He was tensed and ready to pounce. His training taught him well. Only an experienced shinobi like herself could see through his routine, and she had to assume he was there to watch over the patient in some regard. That said, she had no time to entertain his fantasies. There was a woman in need of her medical abilities and she would not waste any time. Let me see. Shizune thumbed through the papers the council had given them on the active shinobi roster, but she didn't seem to recognize him. It doesn't matter. The blonde woman cut her off, hand on her hip. You, boy, what are you doing here? I was told this room had only one patient. Naruto wasn't sure he liked her attitude, but he had a sense that she knew a lot more than she let on. If she really was here on business to help Kakashi, it wouldn't do for him to make the situation more complicated. He decided to answer truthfully. What could it hurt? I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Kakashi Hatake, the occupant of the room, is my. Naruto searched for the right word. Mentor, I guess. I've been watching over her since she was checked in here. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. If the reports they gave her were accurate, Kakashi had been in the hospital for a considerable amount of time. It took dedication, even for a student, to stick around for that long. Her respect for the boy went up a bit, especially after she recognized his name. So this is the boy Jiraiya was talking about. The Jinchuriki, son of the Yondaime. Hero of Konoha after the battle against Suna and Oto. He didn't look like much, but then again, neither did Jiraiya. The sage turned out as a somewhat passable shinobi, who was to say Naruto couldn't do the same. Tsunade shook her head clear, she had bigger things to handle. Naruto eyed her as she approached the bed with his teacher. One wrong move and she could easily kill Kakashi, and it made him uneasy. He didn't even know who she was. Shizune saw the way Naruto eyed the next Hokage and it bothered her. Didn't he know who they were? It was almost insulting to think a shinobi might distrust someone of the caliber of Tsunade with their lives. The Sannin recognized the look and found herself biting back a smile. She had to admit, he was protective over this woman for what it was worth. Don't worry, kid, I'm here to help, believe it or not. Tsunade said with a bit of amusement, but she turned serious as she did a quick analysis of Kakashi's condition. Sorry. Naruto realized he had been too obvious. He didn't mean to be so suspicious, but it had served him well in the past. I just don't want to see Kakashi get hurt again. Well, that might be unavoidable. Naruto's eyebrows went up, but she quickly extrapolated. As a shinobi, you are going to be put into this kind of situation a lot. I suppose you weren't there when she got hurt like this. She recognized a heaviness to him, a burden of guilt. The boy was sluggish, tired, staying in the hospital was starting to affect his health. Guilt or regret could easily explain why he had been so adamant in sticking around. Naruto looked at the ground, unable to answer. Maybe it was stupid to dwell on something he had no way of preventing, but it still bothered him. It wasn't just Kakashi's condition that bothered him about it though, it was his weakness in comparison to the enemy shinobi. Through his training with Asuma and Team 7, he thought he had progressed to a point that not many others could have in such a short time. Maybe that was true, but it still didn't prepare him to fight against someone like Orochimaru or Itachi. It was going to take a lot more if he wanted to protect the village from those kinds of threats, and he wasn't sure if he could do it. Naruto-kun. Shizune woke him from his stupor, calling him by his first name. He shook his head clear of silly thoughts. Getting depressed wasn't going to help anyone. Yeah, I wasn't able to fight with her. When I fought against the guys who did it to her, I realized just how strong they were in comparison to me. I went out for revenge and almost got killed. Tsunade's gaze hardened when she heard his motivation, revenge. It was something that would lead to nothing but misery. Don't be naive, she said with a harsh tone, surprising the others. Revenge has gotten a lot of people killed and rarely does it ever end well. You are better of burying it and moving on. Naruto crossed his arms in an act of defiance, but dropped them a moment later. She was right, after all. Yeah. Things were silent for a while as Tsunade continued to touch and prod Kakashi's body on occasion with her hands. After she had gotten a grasp on what was ailing her, she began to go through a set of well-practiced hand signs. Her hands began to glow a sage green, the color associated with medical ninjutsu, before she placed one over the Junin's forehead. Naruto waited with bated breath. He had seen different doctors attempt the same thing every week he had been there, but to no avail. What would make her technique any different? Somehow, the new arrival's natural ability and commanding aura gave Naruto a sense of hope he had not felt in quite some time. Shizune couldn't help but smile as she saw relief flood over Naruto as Kakashi began to stir. It was as if all that weight on his shoulders finally could leave him. Ah, my head. Kakashi grumbled. An unsteady hand drifted toward her scalp before it was slapped away by Tsunade. The treatment had not been completed and she did not want the woman to interfere. Hold still, there is still some healing left to do. Tsunade's voice offered no room for argument, and the Junin reluctantly laid back down. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto couldn't hold himself back as he made a step toward the bed. Naruto. Is that? You. Her voice cracked, her mouth was surely dry from inactivity. It's good to have you back. He stumbled out. Her eyes were still closed, though her strength seemed to be slowly returning. How long have I been out? A couple of weeks. That seemed to bother her greatly as her eyebrows furrowed. Surely her thoughts were racing to try and account for what she had missed, what had happened after she was knocked unconscious. And Akatsuki, are they? She left the question open on the off chance Naruto didn't know what she was talking about, but she had a hunch he did. Gone. Naruto said, his jaw clenched. But Sasuke was wounded when he went after one of them. We were able to get to him in time though, and Akatsuki was forced to retreat. The news of Sasuke getting involved did not sit well with Kakashi. She opened her right eye, quickly closing it again with the light in the room being too much to handle. Shizune quickly switched off the ceiling lights and closed the curtains to better help her adjust. It was timed just as Tsunade relinquished her hold of Kakashi, though she remained close to the bed. Sasuke's injured. Kakashi asked Naruto, turning her head toward him. He looked normal enough, but he also seemed to be exhausted. What had he been doing since she had been knocked unconscious? Yes. Tsunade answered instead, making her turn around. After I was done with you, I was going to go check on him next. I see. True to herself, Kakashi remained calm in the presence of a stranger. Even after being given the troubling news, she didn't break her facade. You should remain in your bed for now. There is still the small bit of you being in bed for so long, your body is weak. Stay overnight and you can leave in the morning. Tsunade explained with a professional tone. She seemed quite accustomed to dealing with the patient. Of course, Tsunade-sama. Tsunade. Where have I heard that name before? Naruto racked his brain for the source as the blonde woman and her assistant began to walk out. In the doorway though, she turned around and addressed Naruto. You, Naruto, she said, finally addressing him by name. You aren't allowed to leave either until you get some rest. Staying here for those 2 weeks did a number on your health too. With that, the doctor left to move on to the young Uchiha. Naruto's head snapped up when he finally recognized the name. Hiruzen talked about Tsunade when he mentioned Jiraiya and Orochimaru. Together they formed the 3 legendary ninja, made famous during the Second Shinobi War. Apparently her medical expertise was well renowned throughout the world. For her to be in Konoha must have been significant. You were here for 2 weeks. Doing what? Kakashi's voice sent a warm flush to his face. There was no easy way to get out of that. Unfortunately for him, his silence made his mentor come to her own conclusions. Her eye widened when she realized he had been there watching over her. Was it really that concerning? Naruto. Concern laced her voice as she watched him approach. Sorry, Kakashi, but I couldn't just leave you alone. He sat down in the chair by Kakashi's side. That fatigue Tsunade had mentioned was starting to catch up with him. He found it difficult to keep his eyes open and he struggled to stay awake. Surely his teacher had questions and it was his duty to answer them. Kakashi seemed as if she was going to say something, her mask shifting where her lips were. Just as quickly, her body seemed to relax and Naruto thought for sure she was smiling. Well, I suppose I should be flattered for your concern. He looked at her, incredulously. Was she really going to let it go, just like that? Thank you, Naruto. Sorry I made you worry. Her eye closed in what he had recognized as the face she used to reassure those she knew. That smile, even when hidden beneath the dark cloth, was enough to make him smile too. I'm just glad you're awake again. I was starting to think. Well. He shrugged. Better he didn't finish that sentence. She nodded. Being out for a few days was already enough to worry most. 2 weeks. Even she couldn't wrap her head around that. Maybe it's better you don't think, Naruto. You heard what Tsunade said. Let's just get some rest. He nodded in agreement to her suggestion. If he could just close his eyes for a while, he would feel better. The Junin leaned back into her pillow and tried to settle in. She had no intentions of going to sleep, as she was already well caught up in that regard, but it might make her blonde compatriot feel more comfortable going to sleep if she was going to as well. With a bit of hesitation, Naruto folded his arms on the side of her bed as a pillow and laid his head down. The drastic shift from falling asleep haphazardly in the chair or against the wall made sleep come easy for him. Within just a few minutes, Naruto had fallen asleep. Kakashi recognized that he had fallen asleep when his breathing leveled out, his muscles finally relaxed. Offering her bed was the least she could do for her student after he stayed by her side that entire time. Unable to help herself, she carefully ran her hand through his golden locks. They were so soft, and she always found it interesting how his hair managed to stick up like that without any help. He must have inherited it from his father, as her sensei had a similar look in his youth. Though there were plenty of things she needed to think about, worry about, even obsess over, laying there with Naruto gave her an odd sense of calm. She hadn't been lying when she said she was flattered. For someone she hadn't known terribly long to be that dedicated to seeing to her health. It was humbling. Even though he could not hear it, she felt the need to say it again. Thank you, Naruto, for being the first person to care. 000. Some time later. Konohagakure. 000. Naruto and Kakashi walked through the large gate that constituted as the entrance to the village. They had just returned from an important scouting mission in Taki. Reports were finding a larger amount of spies on the border, and they were being found deeper and deeper in the land of fire. Considering their experience and how comfortable they were working with each other, Tsunade assigned them together. In the meantime, Team 7 kept on doing its own missions that didn't require Kakashi's leadership. Most were simple chores, but on occasion they would leave the village. The last they heard, Arata and Sasuke both were in the hospital recovering from another mission. Apparently, the enemy was a bit too much for them to handle alone, so they had to work together to fight them. The two had a strained relationship, though they still respected each other. Hopefully, nothing was out of the ordinary. Glad to be back, Naruto said with a smile as they walked the streets. Kakashi nodded, tilting her head toward the sky. It was nice to get out of the village after she had to stay in the hospital for so long. Kakashi-sensei, after we report to Tsunade, why don't we grab lunch and take some to the rest of the team? It would be no surprise to find Sakura in the hospital, doting on Sasuke. That meant they could reunite the team for a nice lunch. It was something they hadn't had the opportunity to do in a long time. The Junin smiled. That sounds like a good idea, Naruto. They remained in comfortable silence until they finally arrived at the Hokage's tower. It was a short walk up the stairs before they entered to find Tsunade, as usual, swamped with paperwork. Shizune wasn't feeling merciful as she plopped another stack down in front of the older woman's face, much to her chagrin. Damn it, Shizune, I said bring it when I was ready. Does this look ready to you? She grabbed a bunch of the documents and waved them around to make her point. If I waited for you to be ready, these papers would never be signed. Please continue, Hokage, her apprentice said with a teasing tone, emphasizing her master's new rank. It was definitely a shock to Naruto when he realized the woman he had been suspicious of was to become the next Hokage. After they got formally acquainted, a little before her inauguration, they got to know each other a little better. As it turned out, Tsunade had been brought back to the village by Jiraiya after he helped her defeat Orochimaru. Though she was not interested in becoming Hokage, she wanted to do something for the Sandaime, and she knew the best thing she could do was look after the village until a replacement came along. If nothing else, he respected her for her honesty and the loyalty she had to still go through with accepting the job. It wasn't his place to say, but he got the feeling she had taken a liking to him. It was probably nothing, but that glint in her eye every time he walked into the Hokage's office was off-putting. Hokage-sama. Kakashi announced their presence as the woman struggled to see past all the paperwork. Kakashi. Naruto. That you. In an unceremonious fashion, the Hokage pushed a heap of the paperwork onto the floor to better see them. Shizune let out a shriek and began to organize them again, but it had bought Tsunade some time. She seemed quite grateful for their arrival. How did the mission go? Any trouble? Tsunade asked, lacing her hands together. No ma'am, it was actually very quiet. We saw no evidence of Taki's movements into our country, but we were able to coordinate with the border guards. Together, we determined their most likely areas of infiltration and possible countermeasures for them to take in the future. Kakashi explained. Naruto remained quiet during the debriefing as he had already deferred his knowledge to Kakashi. Too bad for him, Tsunade was interested in his opinion as well. Regardless of his age, the boy had a good intuition. Naruto, what did you think of the border? Anything off? When he heard his name called, Naruto jumped a little. He recovered quickly though and expressed his concerns. While we were there, I found that many rivers were shared around the border. Some even flowed from waterfall country to fire. That got me thinking that, considering the fact that Taki is well known for its Sweden, their spies could be using the rivers to infiltrate the country. Tsunade raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. That meant he should continue. After determining the supposed location of the hidden village within the country and comparing it to nearby rivers, I found at least 3 that could offer an easy route to infiltrating fire. I brought it up with the gate guards and recommended they construct dams using Doden techniques in specific areas along the route to ensure the spies could no longer easily swim past. Good work. That was something no one had caught before, so let's see if it improves the situation any. You two are dismissed. They bowed and prepared to leave, but the door slammed open before they could even turn around. Tsunade-sama. There's a nurse from the hospital stood there, out of breath. After seeing Kakashi, she seemed to calm down a bit. Not one to enjoy long pauses, Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Well, out with it. What's going on? Recoiling from her angered tone, Kaori collected herself. There is a fight breaking out between 2 of our patients. Considering who they are, the doctors asked that I get your help right away. Who is it? Naruto asked, curious. She frowned. Arata Sato and Sasuke Uchiha. They were headed the roof the last thing we heard. Naruto and Kakashi's eyes widened and they looked at one another in concern. A fight between their students. Where had something like that come from? Kakashi. Naruto. Tsunade called to them after a short pause. Handle this, and make sure it doesn't happen again. Your team is good, but if there are disagreements then it's time to take care of them. I'm afraid it could be much more than a disagreement, Hokage-sama. Kakashi said with a certain ominous tone. She moved over to the window and opened it. With a tilt of her head she gave Naruto the silent order to follow before disappearing into the village. Her subordinate was close behind, a similar look of concern etched on his features. Tsunade sighed, just when things were starting to look up. Here you are, Tsunade-sama. A voice rang out in a nice tone, too nice. A stack of papers were laid onto her desk, courtesy of Shizune. It seemed whatever the crisis was, she would never be able to escape from paperwork. Damn. She readied her stamping hand, clutching the small tool like a weapon. Hurry up and mature, the both of you. At least one of you can take this job off my hands, right? 000. Arata. Sasuke. Stop it. No matter how hard she tried, Sakura always felt weak. Her teammates were always out of her reach, even after she tried so hard to be their equal. Was this all she could do? Cry until she got her way? Not even that would work. Not this time. Sasuke backflipped until he hit the chain link fence. He hopped up and used it as a spring to launch himself high into the air, in the meantime gathering chakra in his hand. It was time to prove once and for all who was the strongest of their team. Arata never backed down whenever they got into fights, and that was something Sasuke could no longer abide by. After losing to his brother, he needed validation that his strength was still there. Arata grabbed a few kunai and began to levitate them with his powers. If Sasuke wanted to beat him, he was going to have to work for it. He didn't ask to become a shinobi, but if they said he was cut out to be one, who was Sasuke to tell him otherwise? If he had to prove that with a bit of violence, so be it. Arata. Sasuke growled, Chidori flaring as he sailed through the air. Sasuke. His teammate responded in a quiet, angry tone. He sent his kunai forward, straight for Sasuke. If he didn't move out of the way, he would be impaled. With all of that adrenaline rushing through his body, there was a chance he might be very willing to take that hit if it meant reaching Arata. Luckily, it never came to that. In what seemed like an instant, Sasuke's wrist that wielded the mighty Chidori was grappled by Kakashi. With little ceremony, she twisted her body to gain momentum and threw the boy toward the roof's water tower. Kakashi. Arata was taken by surprise, and the kunai were too close to stop from hitting her. Just as suddenly as when Sasuke was taken care of, the kunai changed course and plunged to the ground, harmlessly. Sakura and Arata looked around to find Naruto standing on the chain link fence, his hands in the snake hand sign. That's enough, he said, his eyes brokered no room for argument. Sakura had been running to try and stop the fight, but now she wasn't sure what to do. So she stood there and let out her feelings, sobbing. Why couldn't they all get along? Kakashi frowned and walked over to the girl. She wasn't satisfied with the way she had handled her team's training as a whole, and that made the fight her responsibility. It also meant those tears were because of Kakashi's weakness, and that meant she had to fix them. It was her first team and she was determined not to lose them. Naruto leapt off the fence and approached Arata. He was not as sympathetic as Kakashi. As far as he was concerned, those two had to own up to their mistakes. What the hell did you think you were doing? Naruto asked, crossing his arms. Arata looked down to avoid his gaze. He hated it when adults looked down on him, something he got a lot when he lived on the streets as an urchin. None of your damn busi. Before he could even finish the retort, he was slammed against the fence by Naruto. That isn't good enough, Arata. I asked you what the hell did you think you were doing? Kakashi and Sakura turned their heads to see Naruto scold him. It was harsh, but Arata was thick-headed. If they were going to get through to him, he needed to be reminded of the position he was in. Naruto pointed toward Sasuke, whom had finally recovered and pulled himself free of the water tower. That's your teammate right there, and no matter how you feel about him, you don't use a technique like that against them. Arata bit his lip, trying to resist from crying. I bet I know what happened. He goaded you into a fight, and you took him up on that to wipe the smirk from his face, right? No answer, so he pushed him into the fence again. Right. Why yeah. But what both of you did was wrong. Both of you have to own up to it. We trained you to work together, not go for each other's throat when you get angry. Naruto was so disappointed, he let his emotions get the better of him. He's right, Arata. Both you and Sasuke were out of line when you chose to fight one another with techniques aimed to kill, not wound. Kakashi said, before looking down in regret. But as your team leader, this was my responsibility. It's my fault it has gotten this bad, so I'm sorry. Arata couldn't believe he was hearing his sensei say things like that. Was she being serious? It was their fault that they fought each other, not hers. But Kakashi sensei. She disappeared in a cloud of smoke, cutting off his protest. He saw her reappear next to Sasuke, probably to give him a similar lecture. The hand that had been painfully grasping his shoulder was withdrawn, and Naruto backed away from him. Comrades don't fight dirty, Arata, remember that. You don't have to like Sasuke, hell that rivalry might even make you want to train harder, but don't let it be your sole focus. Remember what's really important, and you won't fall to the same trap as Sasuke. Naruto said in a somber, almost regretful tone. After seeing how that revenge had consumed Sasuke, he had to admit that things did not look good for the Uchiha. He would have to rely on Kakashi to handle him, because if his angry display was anything to go by, he still had a ways to go before he could be a proper sensei to anyone. That didn't mean he was any less concerned for Sasuke, but helping him sort out his problems was something that Naruto was not equipped to handle. The least he could do was try and prevent something like what happened today from happening again. Unable to respond, Arata just nodded. It wasn't like he enjoyed fighting with Sasuke, he didn't live for combat. He'd much rather sit around and do nothing than be a shinobi. Too much thinking, too many rules. But, that was what he was now, and if it meant his sensei could rest easy, he would try harder. Come on. Naruto looped an arm around his shoulder before ushering him toward the door. He motioned for Sakura to follow as they walked past. Both genin were confused, but did as they were told. Where are we going? The girl asked, confused. Before this mess happened, Kakashi and I were going to go and get you guys lunch. Now that you have so rightfully displayed you can walk. He painfully rubbed Arata's head to make his point, much to the boy's ire. We can go out for lunch. My treat. Despite the situation, the younger shinobi couldn't help but smile. Even after such a tense standoff, Naruto was still trying to make them feel better. Though they wouldn't admit to it, they had come to see him as another sensei. He was around as much as Kakashi was when it came to training, and he checked in on them even when Kakashi was out of action. To see him concerned about them validated their belief that he was in fact a teacher to them. Don't worry, Kakashi will convince Sasuke to come along. Naruto said with a smile, mostly directing it to Sakura. Knowing him, it might take an extra bruise or two. After only 5 minutes of walking, the team was back to all smiles, and Naruto only hoped he could make it last. They deserved better, and he hoped they could find a way to get along again. What they had all been through together should have been enough to validate they were just as good of friends as they were teammates. Boy. We need to talk. A deep voice rang out in Naruto's head, making him stop in his tracks. It was something he had thought would never happen, considering how quiet the beast within had been. What made him want to talk now, of all times? Naruto-san. Sakura called out in concern. The blonde had just frozen up in the middle of the road. He pushed the thought from his mind and smiled. It's nothing, just remembered something I need to do after we eat. Come on. Naruto ushered them along, though they did sneak a few worried glances after that. We will, Kyuubi. It's about time you and I get properly acquainted.